What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto's body was addictive? And women would do anything for just one night? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. 6 years later, three solemn figures walked slowly upon the road through a forest. The most visible features was the fact that one was a white-haired, kabuki outfit-wearing, red-stripped old man who had an air of confidence about him. His build was quite strong, and on top of which he was the tallest. The second figure was a long blonde-haired big-head woman wearing a traditional black ninja's outfit with a green jacket with the kanji for gamble on the back. The third most distinguished and thus brightest beacon of a figure was a 9-year-old boy barely waist height to the old man, but his golden spiked blonde locks defied gravity. What made him even stand out more was the pronounced whiskers, as well as the dazzling sapphire eyes. Open the boy's shoulder was a rather long feminine vixen of a fox, red with white tips on her two tails. The fox just smiled warmly, nuzzling into the warmth on the blonde's shoulder as she cuddled into the nape of his neck. Upon the boy's back was a large backpack filled to the brim with things from his 6-year adventure. As they viewed the red wooden gate of Konoha with its green arch, the boy couldn't help but put his right fist into the air before squealing in joy. "Naruto, I know you're happy to be coming home and all, but you could afford to be a little more quiet. Besides, I'm not sure how they're going to react to Mini Kitsune-chan and Maki being the same being. We know they don't take well to foxes," Jiraiya stated clearly as he rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Oh, I wouldn't worry about that, you old pervert," the vixen stated as she looked over at old man. "We foxes aren't known for tricksters for nothing, right, Naru-ni-san?" That same fox stated. Maki, who resided in the mind, could only nod inwardly. "Besides, I don't think they would dare try to attack her. She's rather tough. I'm just surprised my bad luck rubbed off on you with that bet. You know you shouldn't bet against Naruto. He is perhaps the most unpredictable person." The old man just grumbled. "Stupid brat, using her against me," he grumbled yet again. Naruto couldn't help but laugh. "Well, Ero-senin, it seemed to me you liked Naruto a lot. I'm just surprised that you fell for my anti-pervert jutsu. Why no jutsu?" He chuckled. Tsunade laughed along with Kitsumaki at the predicament, remembering it all too well. "Besides, Kitsune-chan is nice. She's an angel until you piss her off," he said, stroking the top of his sister, the vixen's head, soliciting a yip of satisfaction from her. "And as I stated before, ya, I didn't help the boy in creating that technique." The fox chuckled. Tsunade couldn't help but enjoy her teammate's plight. "Besides, if need be, I can just simply wrap my two tails around each other to give them the solid appearance of one. Hey Oba-chan, what are we gonna do first when we get back into the village?" "First things first, that nickname was cute at first, but it's annoying, so stop calling me that brat. Secondly, we have to see the Hokage first and let him know we are back if he already doesn't know. After that we go from there. Though I'm wondering what is taking Shizune so long to catch up," she stated. She said she had to take care of something about a tab back in that town. Naruto stated. Tsunade gulped for a moment, which didn't go unnoticed by Jiraiya. Throughout the 6 years, it wasn't uncommon for Tsunade to sneak out and gamble, nor was it for Jiraiya to go peeping, but they made sure that Naruto didn't notice and even managed to get Kitsu to keep it secret. After an hour more, they were met at the gate by the Chunin guards, as well as 6 Anbu and the Hokage himself. The old Hokage looked over at the fox before raising an eyebrow. Naruto grinned as he petted the fox, enjoying the comfort it gave. "Welcome back, you 3, or should I say 4. Where is Shizune?" he asked, getting back to the subject at why one of their group was missing. "She's visiting some friends in the town about 4 hours away," Tsunade quickly retorted. Naruto inwardly smirked along with Jiraiya. Naruto wasn't as idiotic or unperceptive as he let on. He knew when Jiraiya was out peeping and when Tsunade was out gambling, mainly telling just by their scent as well as by their emotions, which they couldn't hide. If one thing the glares and hatred had taught him, it was his uncanny ability to read most people's emotions upon their eyes. "Oh, I see. Well, shall we? I will have the Anbu put your things in your new home, Naruto. Meanwhile, we should probably get to the confines of my office. Too many people around could hear after all," he stated as he looked over at his shoulder at the Chunin guards. They gulped visibly before silently nodding, knowing that if they spoke about this, they would be stuck doing missions so far below D rank that it would be categorized as cruel and unusual punishment by ninja standards. The Hokage smiled as he turned towards Naruto, more so the fox on Naruto's shoulder before reaching out and scritching underneath her jaw. The Anbu tensed for a moment as they thought the fox was going to bite, but instead it just licked the top of Sarutobi's hand appreciatively. Sarutobi smiled before picking up the boy after he unslung his pack, handing it to an Anbu who immediately had his face planted into the ground. Hehe, sorry about that. Arrow Senin here said I could go without my weights for a week to allow my muscles to relax. The Anbu nodded before tensing and lifting up the pack. He managed to swing it onto his shoulder before disappearing in a flash of smoke. How much weight was in those? Sarutobi asked. Jiraiya just smirked, as did Tsunade. About 200 pounds, plus all the scrolls and many other things the brat here picked up, as well as presents from all occasions. All in all, that pack had to be every bit of 500 pounds. Would have been more if the kid wasn't smart enough to actually put the bulkier stuff into scrolls. The old man just chuckled before nodding. Everyone there aside from the Chunin guards disappeared via swirls of leaves or smoke plumes. Okay, this is going to be interesting, Sano? One Chunin guard asked. With that brat around, isn't it always? Besides, you saw how that Anbu guy just fell over. To the brat it was like it was nothing. Geez, I hate to see what he does to people who piss him off. I don't want to think about it. Just be glad we are doing this instead of hunting down the daimyo's cat. Sarutobi smirked as he sat down in his leather chair. To him it was a good day. The paperwork, well aside from the last little bit thanks to the 4 that had arrived, was done. He couldn't help on top of that Naruto Uzumaki was back. He knew a certain Hyuga heiress would at least cheer up about that. He couldn't help but feel sorry for the girl and her father. Their mother died young while giving birth to Hinata's sister Hanabi, and if that wasn't enough it hurt Hiyashi so much that he became stern and relentless. This in turn he struggled to teach Hinata to be strong, but it ended up crushing her self-esteem. He would have interfered, but he had no right since it was a family affair. What was worse was that Hiyashi himself took up an air of seriousness, even beyond what he had before when it came to things. Sarutobi knew the council was using Hiyashi and Hiyashi knew it as well. But they both knew that the only way that rain could stop was when the new head of the Hyuga came into place, and thus they could invoke the right to change out the council. So old man, when do I begin the academy? I can't wait till I go and I'm gonna see Hinata, learn some jutsu, and work my way up to take over your job. Naruto stated, his fox-like grin on his face. Hehe, I'm glad to hear that. You will start in a week, so how good have you gotten while out there with my students? Arrow Senin here says I need to calm down a bit, pay more attention, and hold back on some of the stuff I learned. Naruto grumbled, the boy is smart, and I don't mean normal. Once he wraps his mind around figuring out something, it takes no time in doing so. Even more so is the fact that the kid has more chakra than most Junin. Just don't ask him to do any of his jutsu. They are rather too good for his age and he shouldn't know about that stuff till he's older. Whoa, hold up there. Did I just hear the great lecherous perverted Jiraiya said that Naruto is too young to think about ladies or use his waijutsu? Suande smirked. Yeah, you heard me right, you drunken gambling flat chess. Due to the wall immediately becoming intimate with his face, he couldn't very well continue. Tsunade leaned in close to Sarutobi before covering Naruto's ears. He's got academy-grade chakra control now at least, not quite genin but getting there, and oh, if you want to motivate him to do something, call it a challenge or a bet. Even throw in ramen and I can guarantee you the boy will surprise you even more. As for your next question, no, I'm not staying in Konoha past a week. I'm still too pissed and too upset at this place, but I will keep up with Naruto and you from time to time. She stated before unclasping Naruto's ears. Naruto smiled warmly. Jiraiya was soon up and sat back down grumbling about how life was unfair. And I can safely assume that this is Kitsu? Sarutobi asked. He looked at the fox before gasping. Yes sir, it's me. Is it so hard to believe that the heart of the boy is so innocent and pure that he would even give me some freedom? Granted, yes, this is the same fox that he took with him, but he had begged me to save its life, even though I couldn't do much more than heal it. On top of which Naruto made a bet with Jiraiya over there that if he could knock the pervert out, he would help make a seal that would allow me to live within this body. Course my real soul and consciousness as well as about 99% of my chakra and whatnot is still in Naruto, but the little one's mind who used to be here consented to me using hers. In any case, she was dying and wanted me to PHSYI Kali protect Naruto in her stead. Of course she's in my summoning realm right now enjoying her new life as a three-tailed fox. And up here, gives me a way to keep up with the clan, she stated with a grin. Her breathing was erratic from how long she had been speaking. She did wish she still had her body back due to the fact it was tough for her relearning how to use a physical body that never once spoke to speak again. I see. Well, what all did you learn, Naruto? The elderly Hokage asked. A lot. I learned how to master the Kitsune Kenpo thanks to Kitsune-chan, he stated before taking a breath to speak again. Actually, he was a natural at it. As you had discussed earlier, it's entirely natural for him. However, I did teach him all that I knew, even I am not a master at it. He is, and I'm damn proud of him for it. He's also quite the genius when it comes to adapting more to it. If memory serves me correctly, there were 7 katas to it. He's increased it to 9, and shows no sign of slowing down. Naruto, I do hope you listen when I say this, but you must also learn other styles. A well-rounded ninja would train in everything before finding his niche, not the other way around. Plus adding in the factor of unpredictability, which I am quite frankly sure you will be known for, will make you stronger. The vixen commented sagely. Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Sarutobi nodded in definite agreement. The fox then jumped into Naruto's lap before decidingly going to sleep. Alright, what about other things I should know about? The Hokage asked. Granted, you did send me a weekly scroll detailing what was going on, but I still like to hear it instead of reading it. His distaste for paperwork showing. Well, Arrow Sanin here had me do chakra control things, like walking up a tree, water walking, weighted chakra hanging, which I will call the most painful damned training exercise I've ever done. Oh, and let's not forget kunai chakra balancing. I'm still planning on getting you back for that, Jiraiya. Naruto grumbled. Don't complain, brat. Kunai chakra balancing? What he means sensei is sitting on a kunai and using chakra to keep yourself from having a kunai in the ass. Tsunade commented. Sarutobi chuckled at this. I am not happy about having to watch the boy literally try pulling a kunai out of his ass every time he got distracted, which quite frankly was a lot. The old man couldn't contain himself before laughing. I may have created a technique, but leave it to a pervert to turn it into a training exercise. She grumbled again. Well, after that I had to throw kunai and shuriken till I could hit the target's dead center, though I stink at it still. Naruto glared angrily at himself. Jiraiya and Tsunade merely sweat dropped. Does he really have no clue? They both thought. Sarutobi saw this with a twitching eyebrow. He pulled out a set of kunai and shuriken before summoning a wooden practice dummy. Show me, if you're good enough I might teach you one of my original jutsus. The Hokage stated. Naruto went from glaring to excited in an instant as both Jiraiya and Tsunade made a cutting motion to their necks trying to signal him it was a bad idea. Naruto picked up a few kunai before throwing them at the target. Each was embedded into the target's center. He picked up a few more, furrowed his brow and threw them again. This time they bounced off the target, causing him to stamp his feet in irritation. Damn fucking piece of shit. He verbally berated the dummy. Such colorful language. I take it you learned that from them? No, he learned it from me. A boy should be expressive with his emotions after all. The fox stated, annoyed at the fact her favorite bed was not there. Sarutobi grimaced for a moment. He then looked at the dummy before arching his eyebrows in surprise. Naruto didn't miss the target. He hit them, however the kunai that were bounced off only did so because they struck the ones before it. Even more so was the fact that it drove them in deeper. He shook his head for a moment, sighing. Swiftly he turned around and walked over to a door before opening it. Inside was a well-designed wine rack refitted to hold scrolls. Smiling, he chuckled before holding out a jutsu scroll. This is kunai shadow weapon jutsu. It multiplies the amount of kunai thrown. However, seeing as it's advanced, I'm going to hold off until you're 12, but it is yours and I lost the bet. Quit it, old man, quit pitying me. Naruto grumbled. If it wasn't hatred, it was pity, and he hated pity. It made him feel like he was weak. Naruto, you're extremely accurate. The reason why your second volley of kunai didn't embed themselves into the dummy was because they struck the ones before it. On top of that, when they struck they were driven further in. Such talent comes from years of practice or a Sharingan eye. he stated sagely. Naruto just looked at the kunai for a moment before nodding. He had wondered why his kunai had notches showing on the loops. Shrugging, he gathered them up and put them back on the Hokage's desk. I presume the same thing happens with the shuriken? Naruto nodded before holding out a box. Sarutobi blinked for a moment, opening it up, showing mangled, several pieces of blades that at one time were shuriken. Kami, Habu is going to freak when he sees that you literally used shuriken to the point like that. That's because when he throws them, he hurls them with a boost of chakra to the hands, making them sharper. For some strange reason I can't really explain it. Jiraiya pondered on that. Sarutobi just smiled inwardly. He had gleaned a rather useful bit of knowledge about Naruto's affinity, but would put that away until he felt it was time for Naruto to know. As much as I like it in here, I'm kinda hungry and tired, old man, Ero-sanin, and Oba-chan. Can I go home? Naruto asked. He was halfway through a long yawn before someone replied. Naruto, before you go, remember what we discussed, Jiraiya stated. He smirked inwardly, as did Tsunade before Shizune burst into the office before bowing in respect, offering her apologies. She was rather tall for a teenager. Her black hair was long, down to the middle of her back, as her own brown chocolate eyes seemed flustered. Naruto smiled warmly before tackling the teenage woman with a hug. Shizune Ni-chan, he yelled out, just hugging her warmly. Tsunade shook her head at the boy, chuckling inwardly. Please forgive me for barging in, Hokage-sama. Tsunade-sensei, Jiraiya. Naruto, what have I said about tackling me? She growled Jiraiya's name when she found out what he had done. Jiraiya smirked before the Hokage blinked. Somehow this had seemed familiar. Oh, you said don't tackle you like a baby in front of important officials. Bah, old man over there is like family. He grinned a large fox grin. Sarutobi once again laughed out loud before walking over to Naruto and ruffled his hair while helping Shizune up. Well, I guess I better go. I get the feeling you old people and Shizune want to talk. Hayate, please come and take Naruto home if you would. Sarutobi called into the speaker on his desk. A sickly-looking man, with rather large bags under his eyes, walked inside. He wore the standard Chunin flag jacket, but his forehead protector was placed on a bandana with the signature leaf and metal plate protecting the back of his skull. He suppressed a cough before bowing and escorting Naruto and the fox with him. The only thought going through his mind was, why did he have to take the Kyuubi home? It frustrated him inwardly, but he witnessed firsthand what happened to those who broke the rules 6 years ago. He feared for his life then and decided to just put up with the order. It was a rather long walk with the demon container, but somehow he had managed to see the nicer side of the boy, though he wouldn't admit it. Watching the way Naruto handled himself, yet acting like a child nonetheless, the way he interacted with the fox as well as his beaming smile. Though he didn't know it himself, Hayate had a sense of respect and wonder for the boy. So tell me, what was that about? The aged Kage asked. He was rather glad Naruto wasn't there. That meant he could finally stop beating around the bush and get down to business. That, and he knew that towards the ending of the meeting the boy would be fuming at a certain clan in Konoha. As it is, Naruto is a natural prankster, but even more is the fact that his tenacity, dedication, and cunning help that. The boy is, how shall I put it, damn near a genius when figuring things out. Though he's naive to a huge fault when it comes to everything else that isn't about ninja. Take history for instance, the brat is a total and complete moron. However, as you can see, put him using the skills, and he is a genius. His mind is like a sponge, and it came to the point after the 4th year that we decided to dabble in tactics. Though we call it pranking, its fundamental skills relied on stealth, distraction, amongst other things. That mask is what he is going to show people for 2 reasons. Jiraiya stated. 1, to hide how depressed his life is. You already picked up on that. Especially after an incident with Maki and what happened afterwards. He berates himself for losing that fox, though in truth he hasn't. Oh, I was wondering what happened to Maki. Well, the thing is, we didn't include this in the report because it is something that you have to know first. A town we were staying in was attacked by bandits while me, Tsunade, and Shizune were handling one set. Another set had slipped in and we didn't know it. At the time Naruto was training with kunai when the bandits showed up and attacked. Maki bit one of them and was injured badly. The depth of the wound across that little fox nearly killed her, and we didn't know about that set until we felt a huge chakra wave. Dispatching the bandits, we came across 6 more, though I can't forget the carnage. Tsunade stated before shivering. What she is saying is that Naruto saw what happened and freaked out. We found him covered in blood with no wounds. The bandits on the other hand were broken, battered, and very much dead. The fox, though barely alive, was nuzzling him in worry before the seal I put on it went active. What seal? A forbidden one. That ties the fox to the fox inside Naruto. You what? Sarutobi yelled, causing the 3 ninja there to balk and cower. It was the bet. I'm sorry, but you know me and my word. I lost the bet, and Naruto wanted it set so that he could share chakra with the little fox. However, Kitsu felt the fox dying, and in effect when Maki saw that Naruto was lying there covered in blood, it made the conscious decision to let Kitsu take over her body. Kitsu gave her more than the little vixen bargained for and is in effect the summoned boss of foxes. Naruto doesn't know he has that contract because of the Kyuubi. After the seal activated, Kitsu spoke to us in fear of what the boy did. He went into a blind rage that someone had attacked his little sister and literally slaughtered them. He doesn't know that he did it, but he feels upset that he let Maki get hurt because of his inactivity. Naruto shouldn't be allowed to wield that much demonic chakra. Normally one would die from a sliver of it in their system. However, Naruto is well different. I can't really explain it. I can though, you 3. A little history is in order, though I really wish you 3 had informed me of this so I could be there for the boy as well. What makes the Kazama clan so powerful is that they are in effect different from us in chakra terms. I'm sure you have seen that everything has a different chakra signature. Take yours for instance, Tsunade. Yours is green not because of your medical practice, but because of your family. Your grandfather for instance had a deep green chakra glow, thus making him able to control demon vessels. Since you are his descendant, that line carries with you, though it's diluted twice. Kazama are on an entirely different league. They have in a sense a pure chakra that counteracts demonic chakra, hence in turn balancing it out. What is scary about Naruto is that having pure chakra is just as potent as demonic, but if you add both into the mix, it's like mixing an acid with a base. They balance each other out, though that also explains why even with as advanced as his chakra control is, it's not helping. That makes a lot of sense actually. Shizune stated. That explains a lot if you think about it. No wonder the kid's stamina is huge. Anyways, I'm sad to learn that the boy has already killed before becoming a ninja, but I'm glad he hasn't gone insane with what follows after that. I'm guessing that Kitsu altered that memory. Yes, she did. She genuinely cares for the brat. Anyways, as how he would be rated based on his skills. His taijutsu is, as I stated, a force to be reckoned with. Tactically he is unpredictable, and in battle that would make him a powerhouse. Add in that insane amount of chakra as well as his natural stealth and skills and you have perhaps an insurgent. Jiraiya stated, trying to find the right words. He will have trouble with the academy if he shows off his true skills, hence the second reason for his mask. He won't fit in easily to begin with because of the past, but if he hides his true skill and acts like I suggested as a moron and a fool, though that wouldn't be hard for him to pull off, he will make a few friends easily. Which brings up something else. That boy is special, and I don't mean retarded either. He can turn a potential enemy into a friend with his personality. He's a natural leader when it comes to that. In truth, if he stays dedicated and on the right path, he could achieve his dream. Take Tsunade for instance. He's right, sensei. Truth is, I don't want to do much with Konoha, especially after Nawaki and Dan's deaths. And truth be told, I despise the position of Hokage and think it's foolish, but Naruto, he's opening my eyes, albeit slowly. I still think the position you're in is a foolish one, but it is to be respected nonetheless. Tsunade bowed. In any case, I want to get off this subject and onto something more meaningful. Naruto hasn't seen a letter from Hinata in the past 3 years. What happened? Tough times, I'm afraid. After the attempted kidnapping of Hinata, the Cloud Country demanded the head of Hiashi Hyuga. However, the clan decided to make a switch. His twin brother Hisashi willingly did so to make sure that Hinata would never miss her father. This hurt not only Hiashi but Hinata and Neji. Neji shows the most of it all because he blames the main house for it, and thus Hinata is often tormented due to him in private. She feels that it's her fault though, and the council does nothing to help. 2 years later her mother died, landing another blow to the Hyuga head along with Hinata after giving birth to Hanabi. The council thereafter along with Hiashi have been strict with Hinata, and thus, Her self-confidence dropped, making her a shell of a child. I wish I could do something, but Hiyashi had made it quite clear that no one outside the clan can. Hiyashi since then has become rather distant and cold, though inwardly he wants to make his daughter happy, so he secretly does things for her against the council's wish, yet he berates his daughter. As for the letters, while I have my suspicions that the council is preventing any contact between her and Naruto. I have seen his letters to her, and had them delivered myself, but when I get the chance to talk to her about it because of how she is feeling, she acts surprised like letters have been coming in. She also stated she's been writing letters to him and mailing them out. I strongly think the Hyuga Council is doing something about it, but as you know I can't interfere with clan issues. Talk about a pain, he shoulda ousted those old bastards the moment they started that. For once my pupil who is strong is now as weak as a god-damned kitten standing in front of a pack of hellhounds. Jiraiya stated. The others nodded in agreement. If that wasn't bad enough, the Uchiha and down to 2 clan members, the eldest of the 2, Itachi Uchiha, had massacred his family and yet left Sasuke alive. He's reported as a missing nin now with the rank of S. He sighed showing them the report. Something just doesn't add up in my opinion. Itachi was a calm and reserved teenager, however he was nice. Granted a few missions before the incident happened he seemed sullen, but that happens in all Anbu. He breathed out for a moment, twirling his dissatisfaction at leaving things undone in his mind and in his job. Then a proverbial Mack truck rammed right against his brain, tugging behind it a battleship. Jiraiya, I've got a mission for you, specifically for your talents and on top of which you will be getting paid even if you fail. He smirked. Jiraiya wasn't known as the #1 information gathering specialist to the Hokage for nothing. After all, he had found a way to incorporate his pervertedness with such tact and skill that no one would really be the wiser. You are to find out everything you can going from the night of the Uchiha massacre, up till you return 3.5 years from now. Before you ask, I'm requesting that you come back because of the Chunin exams. Call it a hunch, but I think Naruto will be taking them, if he has anything to say about it. Jiraiya smirked. To go out for 3.5 years to learn everything he can about Itachi, and do his peeking for his research. It was like he was given free rein again, though this time he wouldn't mess up. This is of course off the scrolls, because if the council figured out that I'm going behind their judgment of Itachi Uchiha, well, it could get a bit dicey for me to say the least. He commented. Tsunade chuckled, glad she never had the desire to be a Hokage. She left that to her brother and her lover, which brought about a solemn look upon her face. Tsunade, I know I've said it and I will say it again. You have to move on. Dan and Nawaki would want you to do that and be happy. Jiraiya stated. 30 years ago he could understand her being upset, but that was then and this is now. I'm going to do you a favor, but you gotta keep up with me. I don't even know why I'm bothering to help you out, you flat-chested blonde, but take this, and enjoy yourself when you leave outta here next week. I do expect you to contact me once in a while. You and me are still a team, ya know, and we gotta look out for each other. Jiraiya stated before handing her an envelope. She arched an eyebrow at it, gathering its weight before opening it. Sarutobi smirked, thinking that there was hope for them yet. Of course he could never have been more proud of Jiraiya. Tsunade balked at the amount of money in there. Jiraiya did know her well after all, but what she didn't figure out was that there was a white little slip of paper in between the bills. You are not to read that until we both are out of the village. Don't want to cause another Heim rage. He chuckled while Tsunade frowned. In truth she had peeked at it but found the paper blank. Little known to her, that same slip of paper wasn't blank, just merely a well-written letter of emotions hidden underneath a chakra-detecting seal. Something that Jiraiya himself had created for a multitude of uses. The old pervert smirked. If he was right about it, the letter would show up while he was gone far enough just in case her rage should show up. Well, anything else, sensei? Other than enjoy yourselves for a week here, then begin your individual tasks. I'm going to inform the Academy of Naruto's admittance, he stated before nodding to them. Naruto smiled warmly at his new home. Granted it wasn't much, a simple bedroom, living room, small bathroom, and a kitchen with a table that could seat 3 people at a small table. It was his home. He didn't have to worry about other kids coming in, rifling through what few possessions he had, beat him up at night or any of that. Hayate shook his head slightly. To him the place was disheveled. Wallpaper was hanging if not torn fully away from the walls. The cabinets were in disrepair. Most of the furniture there was either broken or rotted to the point if anyone used it, they would fall apart. He knew he had heard the Hokage was angry about no one willing to provide an apartment or a home for the boy, but to be forced to accept this was a travesty. All total and utter hatred for the boy whom he had regarded as a demon melted when he saw the boy smile and shed a few tears. He at first thought the boy was crying because of sadness, but that was blown out of the water when Naruto hugged him with a bright beaming smile. "My own home. I have a home," Naruto cried joyfully. To him it looked like a mansion fit for the King of Kings. Hayate looked over at the furniture for a moment, again pondering to sit on it before shaking his head. He couldn't believe that the child was just so happy with a place like that. "Hey kid, I don't normally do this, but let's get you some good furniture and something to eat. Bear in mind I'm only a chunin, so I can't afford much." He was once again caught up in a tight hug, but he smiled. It would seem that Naruto's infectious smile once again found its way to another victim. Besides, what better way to welcome you to your new home than to have some furniture to go with it, right? He managed to pry Naruto off his body for a moment, coughing before pulling out 2 keys. He knew Yugoa was going to bitch to him about spending money, but he didn't care. Even if the kid was the Kyuubi itself reincarnated, though he began to doubt that, no one deserved to live in a dump like that. Naruto took the keys with great pride before pocketing one and hiding the other. Thank you, cold guy," Naruto stammered out. He berated himself inwardly for not paying attention to the guy's name. And as if the angels called the answer out to him. "Just call me Hayate." "Well, shall we?" he said before rolling his eyes at the pet name given to him based on the natural cold he had. It was true, he always had a cold, but he had often used that to his advantage. He may appear sick, but he was always in excellent health and never once have had a cold. How ironic that he would always appear to have one. Thus he led Naruto out of his apartment and towards the nearest food stand. Naruto grinned even brighter while Kitsu the fox just shook her head exasperatedly. Kitsu had the same thoughts alongside Hayate, but was surprised when she no longer sensed the hatred the man bore for Naruto but respect and admiration. In truth, she was a big cause to the hatred, but she accepted that as she had accepted her punishment. Hayate simply smiled before sitting down on a stool next to Naruto. Naruto of course couldn't be happier being in the place he was. It was the one place that the old man Hokage had taken him 6 years ago. It was also the same place that was ran by the very same man and daughter. Naruto's favorite ramen stand Ikaraku's. "So what will you have, kid?" Naruto grinned ear to ear before chirping up. "I'm back, old man, and I haven't had your ramen for 6 years." Naruto yelled. Such blinked before pondering, was it true? Was his favorite little ball of endless eating capacity back? He poked his head out from the stove and gasped. Ayame was the next to follow. She gasped as well before they both ran towards him. "About time you got back. I was gonna be going bankrupt. Luckily the Hokage managed to eat lunch here every day, but even then he can't pay all our bills, can he? So how are you doing? Where did you go? What did you learn? What happened to Mika-ni-chan?" Such stammered out. Hayate gasped at the familiarity for a moment before pondering something. You four know each other?" he stammered out, still confused. "Hell yeah, I know the old man and Ayame-ni-chan. They saved my life, and have the best ramen in the world." Naruto chirped. Kitsu just rolled her eyes for a moment but had a fox grin on her maw. He then took a sad tone before saying, "Mika-ni-chan, it was all my fault." Naruto began to break down. It was his first real loss of someone precious to him. If anything was true, Naruto's unpredictability ran to his emotions as well. Ayame looked down, as did Such. Hayate remained befuddled but went in reverence before shaking his head and clasping Naruto on the back. "Look kid, take it from me, it's gonna hurt for a while, but never blame yourself. You're a kid, and I'm sure Mika would rather you be happy and remember the good times with her, alright? Besides, Mika is still alive and she's right here, isn't she?" Naruto wiped away his tears before looking over at Hayate. He nodded warmly. Kitsu at that point was trying her best to keep quiet. She knew she should have been quiet, but seeing just how depressed Naruto got in a flash at the mention of her surrogate mother, as it were in replacement for the fox summons, she lost that battle. "You know, Kit, I know Mika-ni-chan is glad you're safe, and that she is happy where she is. Well, being a summon boss has its advantages, and maybe sometime I will take you to see her. However, you gotta remain true to yourself and keep going on. Living in the past will only torment you in the future. As I said before, she's a part of me, so in truth you get to see her every day, hee. The fox spoke sagely. Naruto nodded while Hayate, Ayaman, and Such gasped. Th. The fox talked, they all stammered out. Naruto put on a big grin before pondering. Of course I speak, though I am taking a risk doing so with my history in your village, though I am truly sorry for what I've done. She stated quite clearly. I've never seen you here before, Fox. I don't think you have done any wrong to the village. Ayame and Such stated. Besides, you're too cute to do anything wrong. Oh my, this is a first. Well, let's see how to put it. Not that I'm trying to belittle you humans, but if you knew who I was, would you really be doing that? She asked rhetorically. I'm only in this little fox's body because she gave herself to protect Naruto and me. The fox stated calmly. Hayate was the first to pale. Q. The Chunin gasped, trying to finish before the fox's two tails split as a brief wave of chakra surrounded the little bar. They wrapped themselves up as she patted onto the counter and did a bow. Kyuubi is what you humans call me. Again, I apologize with the depth of my being for the trouble I have caused, however I must ask that you do not speak of this. I fear for Naruto's life if people found out, and I admire how pure the kid is, but please, I beg of you, do not harm him to get at me. She stated before setting her head upon the counter, making herself so low as to show submissiveness. In her day she would have never been that at all, but to protect one of her own and to right the wrongs she did commit, this was not beneath her. Hayate opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He scratched his head for a moment, deep in thought, before feeling a calming hand press against his shoulder. He flinched for a moment, looking over at the face of the villagers' military leader. The Hokage himself. Now this is an interesting predicament. He stated, I do believe I merely sent you to take Naruto home, but here you are going above your own duty to take him out to dinner and to get him some furniture. I am rather proud of you, Hayate. As for the little fox, there is no lie in her words, nor is there killing intent either. I know you should be able to feel it. Sarutobi stated calmly before waving at the fox. Hayate gasped again. He couldn't believe that the Hokage was being nice to a fox. The same fox, though in spirit had nearly wiped Konoha off the face of the planet. Calming down was the last thing on his priority for response list. Kitsu, I'm surprised at you though. IOWULD think that the mighty Kyuubi, the nine-tailed Kitsune, would know when to not spill the beans, as it were. This vixen never did like to remain quiet, though I assure you, I will only reveal my prescience to those whom I know mean no harm to the boy. At first I had sensed such from Hayate, but that went out the door over time. If Naruto keeps up with this, his dream will come true. She chuckled. Though Naruto should also learn to detect the hint of malice so he can prime himself should an enemy I can't dispel illusion-wise will not strike him while he's unprepared. Okay, will someone please tell me what the fuck is going on? Hayate yelled. Naruto clamped his hands down over his ears while Kitsu merely folded her ears down against her head. Ayame gasped at the loud noise but saw the once and mighty Kyuubi do that. Of course, even when Ayame was a girl she was always attached to furry little animals, so she did what came natural. She pigued up the said fox and petted it. Kitsu just rolled her eyes for a moment. There were always going to be people who would pick her up and pet her and squeal in delight in every town. She sighed, deciding to get used to it, until she would be big enough not to get that attention. Being a demon lady had its perks after all. Basically, to put it simply, Kitsu Ni-chan here is a chibi demon fox. Naruto chided. She's really nice and protects me cause she was asked to. She didn't say who asked her to, but she hasn't done anything wrong to me. Okay, so the fox that damn near obliterated the village, just happens to take on a smaller form, protects you, and is apologetic about her past, and everyone find this normal? Yep. A chorus between Naruto, the Hokage, as well as two newcomers entered the little ramen bar. Hayate turned around before gasping at Tsunade and Jiraiya. I have to admit though, it struck all of us. Well, save for the brat here, as odd at first, but as she states she is rather sorry. Even more so that she protects him, which shows demons do have a heart. Jiraiya spoke. Male ones on the other hand have a bit too much pride, much like you human males are. Kitsu chided in. Just because she was a demon, didn't mean she wouldn't have the sass to insult the men every once in a while. Except for my little Naruto-chan. She gurgled. The men there, including Naruto, sulked, while the only 3 of the farer cheered. After calming down for a little bit as well as a lengthy discussion on the topic of Kitsu being a secret for the safety of the village by the Hokage, as well as Naruto's splurge on ramen, the day continued to turn into evening. Okay, I'm still a little weirded out by it, but seeing as she has yet to claw my throat out, I can be neutral in this and I won't tell anyone. Crap, Naruto, if we are going to get furniture for your new home we better go soon. I'm sorry to say this, Kyuubi. I mean Kitsu, but you should probably go back with Tsunade and Jiraiya. Ninja and villagers alike don't take kindly to foxes, as you can guess. The female vixen nodded before jumping out of Ayame's grasp and onto Tsunade's shoulder before curling up. Tsunade looked at the fox before sighing and shaking her head. Well then, Naruto, I will see you in the morning, for now I must get back to my research. With that, the aged open perverted Sannin ran off with glee, hoping to escape Tsunade's wrath. Though he would have little luck as Tsunade chased after him. Sarutobi sighed inwardly before wondering if those two would ever grow up. Ayame smiled warmly as both her and her father gathered up the large amount of ramen bowls from their little get-together and thusly were quite happy that their favorite customer was back. Naruto and Hayate bowed respectively towards the Hokage. Well, Naruto bowed as respectively as a boy without manners could. It didn't take long to reach a store which had a variety of furniture, however that wasn't an issue on what they had to sell, it was whom. The shopkeeper was a rather obese man wearing a gray suit. His black hair was matted down as his spectacles shook on his face when he appraised the Chunin before turning towards the kid. Instantly he began to sneer. It was common knowledge to the adults that this boy was the vessel of Kyuubi, however the opinion on the matter was as it was, that Naruto was the demon fox reincarnated. However, on this same day, he had received 3 different warnings all during the day. The first came from an Anbu wearing a white wolf mask stating that he had better not discriminate against those who shopped there. The shopkeeper stated he would never discriminate against people who were buying his merchandise. The only thing he would not allow in his store was any beast of any sort. It was rather true of him though, he never let the Inuzuka canines inside. This also worked in another way to prevent the one person was in his store and he stated it. To say that feeling the rage and intent of bodily harm came from the Anbu was something that freaked him out, but he still held firm. The second was when the 2 legendary Sannin came in, and stated they had better let the vessel of the Kyuubi purchase what he needed. He scoffed at them, calling them demon lovers. This of course did not bode well for him, and he found himself in a rather horrific nightmare that involved frogs and snails. He was once a ninja and knew it was a genjutsu after an hour. However, the last visitor could do something about him, and hence how he ended up in the predicament of selling furniture to the demon, as he called it. The Hokage entered not long after the Sannin and stated that whatever the boy would be purchasing would be on his bill. On top of that, if he found out that Naruto was refused service by the only furniture store in Konoha, that he would make sure that that same shopkeeper would never run or have another store in Fire Country ever again. He also stated that he would immediately send the 2 different sets of visitors to come back and keep their word. Needless to say, this is where he is now, selling furniture, albeit at a good 3 times the price markup. Naruto was rather surprised when the man didn't throw him out, curse at him, but he could feel the hatred off the man and probably felt that since Hayate was here, the man wouldn't do anything to anger a ninja. Hayate on the other hand was surprised when he went to pay, that the furniture selected was already charged to the Hokage. He however was not happy about the price. He could easily tell the differences in normal value and the overbearing price that would be charged. He was outraged that someone would overcharge that much, especially to the Hokage. He grasped the receipt and looked at it again before leading Naruto out. On the back he merely wrote down what the real price was. He may not have been able to do a thing then, but he was going to make sure that the Hokage knew about it. After arriving back at the apartment, Naruto unlocked it before smiling. Everything was still there, though Hayate knew why. Okay kid, let's go ahead and unpack your furniture. You take this scroll and place it where you want your bed, dresser, and desk to be. I will set up your living room, okay? He stated before handing Naruto the respective scrolls. Immediately Naruto grinned before taking his set of scrolls towards the bedroom. Hayate pondered for a moment as he looked at the living room. He felt a rush of air around him before seeing an orange and yellow blur. He blinked, then noticed that all the dilapidated furniture was gone. Chuckling, he performed some minor jutsu before a strong gust of wind blew out all the dust and trash out of the room. Unfurling the scrolls that held a couch, a kitchen table, 4 chairs, a bookshelf, a bed for a fox, as well as an entertainment stand. He performed a few more hand seals before tapping each scroll that had been set in place. The scrolls immediately turned into the furniture after plumes of smoke appeared. He walked into the bedroom before smiling as Naruto was trying to figure out how to get the scrolls to work. Hayate coughed before gesturing the boy over. He went through the seals slow enough for Naruto to see before tapping a scroll causing the desk to appear. Naruto nodded before mimicking and successfully summoning the bed and dresser. Hayate grinned. "You're a quick learner, huh? That was basic material summoning. A good friend of mine taught his daughter that so she could hold anything, though of course she holds a ton of weapons. You two would get along just great if you got the chance to meet her," he stated. "I hope she's nice like my friend Hinata," Naruto stated before unpacking his clothing into the dresser. Hayate got a dumbfounded look on his face for a moment. The boy knew Hinata, as in Hinata Hyuga. Hinata is from that weird clan with pale eyes. She's really nice, though she hasn't ridden me in the past couple of years. I think it's because she's trying to be strong for her baby sister and cousin cause she's training to be a ninja and the clan leader," Naruto stated. "How do you know the Hyuga princess kid?" "Oi, that's easy. After I got out of the hospital a long time ago, I saw some bullies picking on her and a bird, so I beat them up. Her dad thanked me and scared the pants off the bullies. Not too long after that she was being taken away by some doofus ninja with some weird symbol on his forehead that is not like the cool one on yours. I threw a rock at him, missed and hit the alarms or something cause a ton of those white-eyed guys came out and trashed the guy." You're the kid that saved her? Damn, I have to admit you're going to be one strong ninja if you keep that up. I have to be if I want to be the best Hokage in the world," he cheekily retorted. Smiling once again, he flopped down on his single bed before leaning back. Of course there were not blankets, sheets or pillows on it, but the feel of a brand new and fresh bed was comforting. "Well kid, I will see you around. Oh, and stay out of trouble. You and the fox too," he stated before leaving. Naruto pondered for a moment before opening his packs up. He removed quite a few scrolls before biting his finger and sliding a long line of fresh blood over all the seals. Rolling the scrolls up, he placed them in the center of his bedroom before things he had collected came into existence. Smoke and loud pops were the only thing that heralded them into the world. The items ranged from photos, posters, to little knickknacks. He took his time covering the walls that were missing wallpaper with all the posters. However, the largest of them all was a 10-foot by 4-foot picture of the Hokage monument. He hung that on the opposite wall of his bed. In blank ink towards the bottom it stated quite clearly, "Follow your dreams and protect the precious ones you have all the way." It had a chibi frog doing Jiraiya's first step of the dance, and a slug rolling up her sleeve. Naruto could only smile inwardly at this because after all, it was his surrogate family that did so much for him. Lastly, he put empty scrolls as well as his ninja tools on his desk. Beside the desk he had set up his kunai cases on their stand. He remembered shopping for those kunai 6 years ago and receiving a new box every year. The kunai were indeed strange in appearance, but in truth they were designed that if thrown fast or hard enough, the only thing that would stick out of the target was the loop, on top of which pulling them out would be even harder. Instead of the normal diamond-shaped blade, these were arrow-shaped. One could easily just take the ring off them, put on a long shaft, and put on a shaft, and you would have a large arrow or a short spear. Naruto had figured this out especially for setting up some traps. Beside that rack he had managed to place what was left of the 6 boxes of shuriken. He sighed, hoping that the old weaponsmith wouldn't be angry with him at all, though given the fact that most adults hate him outright, he began to doubt the villagers in a sense. It was true that he trusted those who were nice to him, however he had learned not to trust everyone that would be nice. After all, it did take one time for someone to be nice to him and lead him away before mugging him for his money, though that never turned out well for the mugger, but after receiving a long verbal and physical berating from Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Kitsu, he learned not to trust everyone that was nice. Smiling for a moment before shaking out the hard memories of his young life thus far, he only hoped the man would be nice. In any case, he slid his worn gloves off his hand before polishing and resharpening the knuckle blades. They were small and didn't bulge out like most metal knuckled gloves, but they made up for it with being able to shred as well as dig into area that he viciously knuckled. He set those up on the arms of the wooden rack, before placing his weighted training suit on it. Before standing up he had heard a knock on his door. Carefully he tugged one of his kunai out of a box and silently stalked up to the door. "Who is it? Damn it, brat, open up already." A feminine voice called out. "Geez, this is so annoying, Florida. You finish saying that, frog pervert, and I will use your head as my new punching bag for stress relieval." The female voice bellowed. Naruto tossed his kunai into the wall before opening the door for Tsunade, Jiraiya, and of course his sister. They walked in before smiling. Most of the wallpaper in the room, while the areas that were falling apart and off the wall were covered in a multitude of posters and pictures. The fox on the other hand blinked for a moment at the large pet bed by the archway going into the kitchen. Swilty it leapt off Tsunade's shoulder before landing and kneading its paws into the pillow there. Grinning it laid down to take a small nap. Naruto smiled before yelling at the top of his lungs, "Welcome to the Uzumaki home." He grinned cheekily as Tsunade uncorked her ears. She had gotten used to it, but couldn't be sure that his neighbors could. She turned to find Jiraiya howling in pain on the ground, holding his ears. "Damn it, brat, you don't need to yell," the old pervert retorted. "You're yelling too, pervert." "Nice place, Naruto, though it's a bit small. Thanks, Oba-chan. Besides, to me, this place is home, so I have to take care of it. Later on I'm going to be installing an anti-theft trap. Don't want people to break into my place and steal from me. Though the idiot villagers probably think I have nothing worth to steal." He grumbled. He still wanted to be recognized, and his childhood dream since 3 years old of wanting to be Hokage still held true to his heart. What was worse was the fact that no matter who he had with him, no matter how few people liked and in turn recognized him, he knew it wasn't enough. "Well, we went and brought you some welcome home gifts. Seeing as you have some furniture that you can actually use, and the fact that you have an unusual taste for colors, we got you some necessities. Mainly food, some clothing, toiletries, and of course linen," she stated, spying his bare bed in his room. She smiled, nodded to Jiraiya, who tossed her a shopping bag filled with clothing. Catching it, she set it in his room before catching another which contained sheets, blankets, 2 pillows, a comforter, towels, wash clothes, and other various things. She even smiled, tossing Naruto a bottle of shampoo, toothpaste, floss, and mouthwash. "Remember, brat, you need to stay clean to stay healthy." She chuckled lightly. Naruto looked at all the items before smiling. "Got your favorite scents too, ya know. Importing that stuff is hard, but it should come in now that I set a certain shop straight." "You mean threatened to pummel the guy into paste if he didn't order the stuff and have it held for the boy to pick up?" Jiraiya stated before filling one pantry with nothing but instant ramen. He then went and filled the others with spices and the like. "By the way, brat, I would recommend you don't eat ramen all the time. Stunts your growth," he stated before showing off other foods. He then filled the fridge up with perishables before unpacking kitchenwares. Naruto just shook his head for a moment as he came out of the bathroom, having put away his toiletries before absent-mindedly petting Kitsu. "So how long you guys gonna be in Konoha?" he asked. "I'm going to be here for most of the week, then I got a mission to do." The old lecher replied. "I'm going to be going shortly as well. I can't stand this place too much, too many bad memories," Suande stated, only to have Shizune enter the house. The apprentice smiled before hugging Naruto. "It looks nice, Naruto-kun," she stated with a bigger smile. "Oh Tsunade, I ran across this little guy, can we keep him please?" Shizune stated as a small little piglet wormed its snout out of Shizune's black layer of her kimono. Tsunade chuckled before petting the little piglet warmly. "I don't see why not. Course I'm going to miss Fuzzball over here, so I guess taking care of a pig will do. It's a lot better than putting up with a male chauvinistic one though," Tsunade stated as she thumbed Jiraiya. The old pervert on the other hand was too busy writing a few notes in his notebook. "You hear that, Tun? You get to have a nice new home," Shizune stated, snuggling the little piglet. It didn't take long for the group to go and put up all the curtains, shower curtain, blankets, sheets, as well as prepare dinner. Naruto of course demanded ramen, while Tsunade was already brandishing a bottle of sake along with a plate of teriyaki chicken with fried rice and sushi. Jiraiya enjoyed some barbecue beef strips along with some fried noodles and white rice. He and Tsunade shared sake, though his was for an ulterior motive which involved keeping her from getting drunk. Shizune had a simple Japanese vegetable dish, while Tun Tun had leftover food items. They all ate, laughed, and talked of their adventures together, though when it came to an argument, most likely happening from Tsunade and Jiraiya, Shizune and Naruto simply stay away while the two hammered insults at each other. If it became physical, Naruto and Kitsu would simply pull Jiraiya out of the firing range of Tsunade's fists while Shizune would do her best trying to hold her master at bay. Of course this led to Naruto arguing with Jiraiya and Shizune berating Tsunade on manners. Everyone there was happy nonetheless. As dusk approached, Naruto yawned, before scratching his backside like any normal guy would before seeing everyone out. Tsunade was smiling warmly at Naruto's antics before hugging him, stating that he should get as much rest as possible. Shizune smiled warmly before ruffling his hair and hugging him in a sisterly embrace. Jiraiya chuckled, teasing Naruto about having all the women though shut up when Shizune and Tsunade sent a glare that could drain the life out of rampaging boar. He chuckled before tossing Naruto a paper pad as well as a few pens. Listen up, brat. The best way to understand people is to make observations about them. I expect you to write down what you see and hear tomorrow when you go out. Who knows, maybe you will become the next Icha Icha author, hehe. The old pervert stated. Like hell I will arrow Senin. If anything that I'm going to write, it's going to be adventures of a fox ninja. Naruto barked back. Tsunade arched her eyebrows before smiling. On top of that, it's not going to have anything perverted, so go blow it up someone else's ass. Jiraiya grumbled about the youth of the world never respecting their elders. Just cause I'm not a pervert like you, Arrow Senin, doesn't mean I don't respect you. Oba-chan, Shizune ni-chan, Hayate, Old Man Ikaraku, Ayame ni-chan, Enko ni-chan, Scary Scar Dude, and Old Man Hokage. I just do it in my own way. Hey, that you do, brat. Well, I'm off to go do some research. With that he disappeared, leaving Tsunade and Shizune to smack at his after-image. If you turn out to be a pervert novelist, Naruto, I'm going to put you in the hospital myself. Tsunade stated with a deadly hiss. Besides that, I would prefer that you be safe. Make sure you lock up the place when you leave tomorrow. Oh, and tell Hinata I said hi. Hell yeah, I will, Tsunade, though I need to find out why she hasn't written me in a while. She must be busy with her clan and all. Naruto said, rubbing the back of his head. Tsunade turned around waving her hand, though she did so that her face wouldn't betray her. She knew what was happening and could only hope that Hiyashi would still have enough of a heart left to let his daughter once again hang out with Naruto. Shizune was already in Naruto's bedroom, tucking him in, smiling warmly as he was already asleep by the time his head hit the window. She smiled warmly before walking out of the bedroom, closing its door, then turning off the rest of the lights. Finally, with a wave to his apartment, she locked his front door before closing it. Tsunade-sama, do you think he's going to be alright all by himself? Only time will tell. He's got a strong will, we both know that. Though he isn't alone. He has Kitsu with him, and on top of that he does have Enbu watching out for him now more than ever. Besides, he's smarter than he lets on. She stated clearly. Though I won't tell him that. If he wants that damned position so bad, he's gotta be humble enough for it. A sound reverberated throughout the darkness. Its call was raging yet calm and thus annoying to those who had heard it. Slowly the darkness gave way to a blinding light, then lastly the light altered and SWIFLTY bent for form, objects, patterns and everything else. Naruto simply opened his eyes wide before stretching. Grumbling, he backhanded his alarm clock, sending it off the nightstand and into a wall, effectively shutting it off or up in Naruto's opinion. Yawning, he hopped out of his bed, walking absent-mindedly into a wall, then another wall, before managing to get to his bathroom. Turning on the water, he stripped down to nothing before stepping into the shower. YEOWWW. Cold, 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 cold. He yelled as nearly frozen water stung his skin. He turned the knob for warm water, grumbling as it stuck at first before coming on. He felt the cold give way to warmth, though it now had been too late. He was wide awake and doubt anything could get him back to sleep. Scrubbing his body clean, he had enjoyed the scent of the shampoo. It was something that came from Mist Village, a rare flower. Tsunade stated that that flower was his mother's favorite when he had asked about his parents. Tsunade, however, kept the information to a small amount to keep Naruto from figuring out his birthright until later on. Naruto smiled happily to himself as he dried his body clean of water. Taking his time, he went through the daily routine of brushing and flossing, the shower out of the way, and getting dressed. His entire wardrobe consisted of nothing but black metal threaded t-shirts, orange jumpsuits that had blue stripes, and black toeless shoes. He smiled as he suited himself up before grabbing his keys. Silently unlocking the door, opening it and relocking it, he knew that Kitsu would be happy just remaining in the apartment taking naps. In the back of his mind, he wondered if the fox was more like a cat than anything else. Chuckling at that fact, he ran down the street, his real grin quickly to be replaced by his fake one as the villagers glared angrily at him. Doing his best to ignore it, he just simply went on his way, avoiding a few rotten fruit and vegetables thrown at him. His lesson in dodging coming in handy, though on purpose he made it look like he dodged simply by luck. As time continued to flow in the steady stream, Naruto chuckled warmly as he arrived. The Hyuga guards stood firm before drawing their weapons. "Who goes there and what business do you have with the Hyuga clan?" they spoke in unison. "Oi, you bastards again. I'm here to see Hinata-chan. No one is allowed to see her, now leave," the one on the left stated, as he activated his bloodline, sending a pulse of chakra in the air. Naruto sighed for a moment as he slumped his shoulders. "Hiyashi, it's me, Naruto, come out here and deal with your idiot guards please," he bellowed out loudly. The guards gulped for a moment before standing strong. Granted, the ringing in their ears didn't help much either. After a few minutes, the head of the clan exited the compound before looking over at Naruto. He felt the council gazing at him and remembered just what they had stated to him. Inwardly he was enraged as well as regretful, however outwardly his face was cold as stone, unmoving, and unfeeling. He walked past the guards before staring heavily at Naruto. "I must ask you to leave, demon. I cannot allow you to sully my daughter anymore," he stated as harshly as he could, though his eyes betrayed him and Naruto knew it. After seeing hatred in eyes and softness in others, he could easily tell the difference. "Damn it, I'm her friend, I'm going to see her whether you like it or not, old man." The guards cringed for a moment before Hiyashi flew towards Naruto, picking up the boy with ease by his jumpsuit. What everyone hadn't noticed, save for the Anbu who watched from the shadows, was Hiyashi slipping a letter into Naruto's pockets before tossing the boy away. "I will not allow it, now leave before I am forced to kill you. If I ever see you here again without a mission or permission from the council and myself, I will forcibly remove you from this world, whelp." With that, Hiyashi walked back in. He saw the proud smiles on the council and smiled back, though inwardly he was rather beyond angry. He saw Hinata out of the corner of his eyes crying silently to herself behind a tree. Reflexively he closed his eyes, trying to hold back the shame in his own soul. Yet he was forced to do what he was doing to make his daughter stronger and more able to lead the clan. Naruto picked himself up out of the trash before sighing. He could have sworn that Hiyashi was holding back, as if something were forcing the Hyuga leader to do that. Patting himself down, he blinked as he felt a rather thick pad of something in his jacket pocket. He left it there for a moment, grinning inwardly at Hiyashi's sleight of hand before running back to his apartment. Upon unlocking it and entering again, he removed the pad out of his jacket before setting it onto the table. Taking his time, he went back into his room, stripped off his smelly clothing, walked back into the bathroom, showered, and got dressed in cleaner clothing. Walking by Kitsu, he smiled before petting her snoring form before sitting at the table. He looked at the envelope for a moment before pulling out that same pad and pens that Jiraiya had handed him the night before. Taking care to open the letter, he examined the envelope for anything else but found nothing. "Uzumaki-san, I wish to apologize for the actions that I must take towards you. I know that you mean well for my daughter and perhaps the future of this clan. However, I must ask that you do not come around like you used to unless you are sent to pick up Hinata due to the request of someone else. However, outside the compound, if you and Hinata happen to run into each other, that is a different story. I realized something was up when you stopped sending letters, but then I had found something else out. The letters that Hinata had written for you weren't sent. This means that the council is interfering. I found both your letters and hers hidden away under a seal that not even I can access. I am furious at how my council is acting, but there is little I can do about it, I'm afraid. You must promise me that you will continue to watch over my daughter as her friend and protectorate, since you seem to naturally come to that. I am sending my daughter to the academy to help broaden her horizons in the fields of ninjutsu, taijutsu, and genjutsu, as I am sure you are as well. To the public eye, it may seem strange at first, but she needs friends her age and that aren't of the clan, which is why I am happy you are her friend. To the point of what I am saying, I have lost much and have become a shell of happiness of what I am. Please forgive me, but I am forced to be harsh on my daughter, but it is for her own growth and good. Neji has become cold and distant to her. Even her own sister, who is 5 years younger than she, shows more progress as a Hyuga in the terms of the council than she does. However, she has something that no other Hyuga has, and that is kindness that overflows. After you are finished reading my words, please hide this letter really well. If the council finds out that I am doing this against their wishes, I am quite sure they will force my daughter into the branch house along with that accursed seal. Once given, not even I nor any other Hyuga member can undo it, so please take care. Regrettably, Hyuga Hiyashi. Naruto shed a few tears, wondering just how hard it is for Hinata, his first friend his age and companion. It was then that he added another layer to his mask, to make Hinata believe in her strength, to help make her a stronger and better person so that in the end she and him could once again play together and be friends. For her, he would get up again no matter what the situation was, to never ever give up even in facing impossible odds. He swore to himself and to the village that he would help Hinata become as strong as he, if not stronger, just so the stupid bastards of the Hyuga Council would bow before her and praise her. That he would fix the issues with the Hyuga through her, or by his own means. With that, he folded the letter up before slipping it in between the floorboards underneath his bed, the one place he had noted that would make an excellent hiding place. With that, he strapped on his kunai and shuriken holsters, put on his gloves, picked up Kitsu and left the apartment, his sanctuary, to go and train. He wanted to become stronger, he needed to make life easier for all those in the village. It was then that he no longer became a child, but a man in terms of maturity. It was then that he held himself strong and to persevere no matter what. 3 years had gone by just like that. Due to Naruto's mask of idiocy, which was half true due to the fact that he was still a child and still very naive. That, and it didn't help that he was bored out of his mind from some of the lessons. He was last in terms of academic, ninjutsu, and taijutsu study. Though he was a master of his own style, he never once showed it to the class, nor to anyone other than the Hokage. It was his secret style, and as he had read before, the Sharingan eyes, the eyes of the Uchiha, could copy taijutsu moves. He never once wanted that in the world. He never wanted the one style that was his and his alone to be copied, without his permission. Though little did he truly know that the style couldn't be copied, it required feral instincts, something that only the Inuzuka clan had. And even more so was the fact that not a single one of them had Sharingan eyes. In the past there could have been at least one who could be born with such, but that was during the Leaf and Rock Wars, and the only Uchiha in Inuzuka who would at least even love each other was cut short. Obito had died, Rin resigned from being a ninja and effectively disappeared, thus stopping that from ever happening. During those 3 years Naruto had tacked on another nickname aside from Dobi and Dead Last. That was being the infamous prankster of Konoha. The only one to truly and effectively prank a whole village in the span of a single night. This of course was due to the fact that not a single family, not a single person save for those who were decent to him had their toes tied together, their fingers tied to their waist, and had animals painted on their faces, giving the look of their inner animal, as he called it. Each one of them was different. Today was no different, and thus every one of them showed up with their animal masks painted onto their faces. Each person was glaring angrily at Naruto, who in effect was laughing so loudly that it could be heard. Iruka stood at the front of the class with the visage of a lion on his face. The fact that he had yellow fur glued to his neck didn't help either, as he scratched at it. Mizuki, who was beside him, glared at Naruto as he had the looks of a hyena, spotted and such. Throughout the class the students too were angry and growling at him, though none more noticeable than Kiba, who had cat ears glued on top of his hood, whiskers and a black nose. Even the words meow was drawn in well-done letters upon Kiba's jacket. To the Inuzuka it was a fate worse than death, and as such drew great animosity towards Naruto to defile them as he had. Hinata wasn't spared from the prank, but her costume was artfully done and made easy to remove. She had known that it was coming thanks to a note from Naruto, and even had the instructions for removing such costume. Hers was of an angel with little chibi wings placed upon her back. Shikamaru was given the same, since he never once berated Naruto. In fact, he was greatly neutral to the person. His was a simple pair of deer horns glued on his head. Of course he respected Naruto's ability to sneak up on everyone in the middle of the night, even more so to do such elaborate pranks without waking a single person. He knew Naruto was by no means an idiot when it came to things, but he called it troublesome to confront the prankster on that. Choji on the other hand was laughing along with Naruto. He was enjoying a good laugh as he always had when a prank played out, and as such he was happy with his animal costume. It made him look cute, as his mom had called it. Sure, a hippopotamus was by no means a cute animal, yet it was that way and he felt it right. Sakura on the other hand was pissed. Not her usual pissed, as she was busy taking a desk and slamming it over Naruto, who laughed heavily. Naruto on the other hand faked his pain, yet in secret avoided critical points of the attack that could substantially hurt him. The reason for her rage was that she was dressed up like a chicken, decked out in pink feathers. Her best friend and rival was also cheering Sakura on, even managing to kick Naruto every time the desk was lifted. Naruto pictured her as a peacock, and as such she looked it with feathers stuck out like a fan on her posterior. Shino silently enjoyed the session. After all, he loved insects, and Naruto in turn had given him something he could only dream of. Large wooden insect pincers on his hands and Antonia on his head. Shino didn't show any emotion, but inwardly he was laughing happily and thanking the Dobi. Sasuke, however, was even more aggravated compared to everyone else. Since he had woken up, his eyebrow not once had stopped twitching, even going so far as to make his eyes bloodshot with rage, yet it would do him no good to show it. His costume was simply well done. It had involved long feathered wings being put on his back, as black as midnight. Even more so was the fact that his face was painted black along with a beak glued on, giving him the visage of a raven. What irked him so much was that he knew ravens were his brother's favorite animal, and anything that reminded him of his accursed brother set his mood from foul to being in a truly hellish zone. The girls had sensed it and stayed away from Sasuke, as an aura of extreme pain had shown. Naruto on the other hand wasn't without a costume of his own. He knew it would piss off the elders, but he couldn't be happier. After all, he liked foxes, and as such he had a large red fluffy tail, with a white tip, and fox ears on his head. He just continued to laugh as every one of the students and teachers were sending him death glares save for Hinata, Shino, Choji, and Shikamaru. Quiet down and quit beating on Naruto. He's going to be punished after class. He yelled out. He knew Naruto did this simply because of the fact that he, along with Hinata, Shikamaru, and Choji, were given the letter on how to get rid of the costume. Inwardly he was both appalled and proud of his student. At first he had hated Naruto, but as he watched throughout the year that Naruto gave everything his all, he knew that deep down his hatred for the Kyuubi was hurting the boy, and as thus he had developed a bond with the boy, even learning afterwards that Naruto was stuck in the same boat like he was, an orphan, and even more a prankster. He couldn't help but inwardly be proud of Naruto's latest prank. He was angry that he had been part of it, but nonetheless he was proud. Listen up, class. This prank, which I'm almost certain is Naruto's fault, is easy to remove. It's a mild genjutsu for the face paint. As for the glue, just flare your chakra as you have been taught and it should come off, he stated before demonstrating. True enough, the costume fell off, but the remains still shone through. After all, there were parts that still remain. I should thank the idiot, considering this was supposed to be on the lesson plan for today. Dispelling genjutsu. Iruka-sensei. We all know that Naruto is an idiot, dead last, and a complete moron, but if this was a genjutsu, which we all know is his weakest subject, how can this be his fault? Sakura stated before slamming her fist once again on the back of Naruto's head. Amazingly, this genjutsu is so simple that a 3-year-old can do it. Naruto may not be average in genjutsu, but this is by no means harder than, let's say, a camouflage technique. Mizuki stated. In his mind he was already planning on just how to kill the demon brat. Iruka, I'm going to go show the Anbu and rest of the Chunin how to get the townsfolk to remove the genjutsu if they already don't know. Guess that's why you're head teacher, because I thought this was all done with glue, he stated before walking out of the classroom. Soon enough the costumes disappeared into piles of parts, mostly ears, and other things that littered the room. Alright Naruto, can you explain to me what a genjutsu is? Iruka asked before looking over at Naruto, who was busy sleeping on his desk. Picking up an eraser, he tossed it over at the boy, watching it sail and slam against his head quickly with a loud puff. Naruto swiftly lifted his head, having white chalk dust cause him to cough and sneeze. Answer the question and quit sleeping, idiot. Wa? Oh, genjutsu is something that makes things He continued to pick at his brain, or so that's how he looked. Genjutsu is the effect of chakra being slipped from the body to affect the mind's ability to perceive things. Like touch, taste, sound, smell, and sight, he thought. I don't really know, but man, it's funny when used with a prank. He laughed, earning another eraser to the face. Sakura explained so that the moron understands. Iruka twisted as he stated. How the hell can he not know when he did that? Genjutsu is the effect of another person's chakra affecting the perception of the victim. The basic ones affect one sense, but others affect all the senses. Even a person can die from a genjutsu that's well done enough. Case in point, the Yuhi clan are known as some of the strongest and most skilled genjutsu users. She called out. The class nodded while Ino groaned inwardly. Sasuke was indifferent mainly because he had his own things to think about. Alright, today we are going to practice dispelling genjutsu, the mild ones. Everyone pick a partner and go to work on it. I will grade you accordingly. The class broke into a buzz as people began to work on the task at hand. Though the loudest was coming from the girls who swarmed over Sasuke like vultures to a dead carcass. Sasuke-kun, would you like to work with me? Ino stated as she clasped onto his arm. Her long blonde hair dancing in the light as her sky-blue eyes begged the Uchiha. Sakura on the other hand was proud of herself. Her area of expertise was genjutsu, and as such she grabbed a hold of Sasuke's other arm. Why would he work with someone whose genjutsu is average when he could work with the best genjutsu wielder in the class, Ino Pig? Inwardly her mind was flexing its muscle as her inner Sakura was showing off. Sasuke-kun, choose me or forehead billboard brow over there. Ino yelled back at Sakura. Sakura-chan, wouldn't you want to work with me? Might help me get stronger in genjutsu since I kinda suck at that. Naruto tried to interrupt but was smashed away by Sakura's fist. Hell no, idiot, now leave me alone. Sakura yelled out. Sasuke on the other hand was growling to himself. He hated fangirls, but he would have to learn with someone. He began to weigh the possibilities, both good and BQD, with each person of the class. Sakura, since you're the best at genjutsu in the class, I will work with you. He stated calmly, leaving a cold shoulder for Ino. Ino sighed before backing away, knowing that it's best not to agree with him. She immediately went up to the next person she found and worked with them. Sakura was nodding but inwardly was doing cartwheels. Sasuke-kun and I are working together, cha. Naruto chuckled for a moment before spying Hinata poking her fingers together. He smiled warmly, remembering his promise, and walked up to her. Hey Hinata, let's work together if that's alright with you? He asked. Hinata's eyes grew wide as her face began to flush. Here her secret crush was asking to work with her, to be next to her and pay attention to her. She continued to blush, getting redder and redder until he stared deeper at her. You okay? You have a fever or something, cause you're turning all red. He stated, moving closer. Why? Yes. She replied before he moved closer. What happened next was common for her to do, she simply fainted. Naruto caught her before leaning her forward on her desk. He was wondering why she had been doing that more and more, especially when he talked with her. He knew she was never like that and pondered if it was because her clan was overworking her. The rest of the day continued on as Hinata woke up, worked with Naruto until he got too close before passing out and dreaming of her precious Naruto-kun. Naruto on the other hand kept wondering if Hinata was alright, and as thus each time she passed out he wondered if it was just him. Alright class, that's enough for today. Go home, get some rest, and remember what you learned here today. Naruto, you're going to stay after class again, so don't even try to sneak out. Iruka stated clearly as Naruto had inched towards the door. He hung his head low and grumbled as the students laughed at him. Before long everyone had filed out while Naruto sat dejectedly at his desk. Naruto, I know you were holding back. That genjutsu was better than I let on because I know you. I just want to know why you try to act like an idiot. The teacher had stated. His scar across his nose was visibly arching as his face took on a worried appearance. I know you're better than you let on. Why don't you just show it to the class? Maybe they won't pick on you as much. It's not that, Iruka-sensei. It's just that the last time I showed that IKENW something, the teacher accused me of cheating and thus I got punished. Besides, acting like an idiot is only have true cuz I am. I know I don't understand things as everyone else does, because for me it's different. Besides, if no one takes the time to get to know me, then they don't deserve to know me. Naruto stated, I know I want to be seen by everyone to be accepted, but when I try, everyone just says I want attention. I tried other ways of getting it early, but I got hurt bad because of it. Though I don't know why people hate me so much. Naruto lied. He knew why they hated him, but he didn't care. He knew he would still protect them because after all this is his home, and he knew that a Hokage gave up so much that they could never have a normal life. Just another thing he aspired to even though he wanted it. I see. Well, at least do your best. I know you try hard, especially on your jutsu, and don't think I see how your aim is. You have as good as aim as Sasuke does, but you lack confidence on that. He stated, you're wrong. Sasuke is better at shuriken and kunai throwing than I am, and even still I still miss half the time. He stated, well, maybe I can explain that. I don't know why your other instructors didn't show you why and called you a failure, but I'm not going to call you that unless you do okay. You know these two kunai, right? He said, holding up Naruto's weird kunai. Examine them closely, he said, tossing them to Naruto, who immediately caught them. Naruto examined them for a moment before setting them down. Notice the nicks in the blades and on the handles? Your aim is so good that you're hitting your target perfectly. Every follow-through after that hits the same target and thus drives your kunai in further. If that weren't it alone, I would say you would use less kunai to hit the target and more for pushing your target when you want them. He stated clearly, you're too good at traps, as well as stealth, that much is evident to your prank. But you should really show your skill truly. Your Kawarami skill is above the rest of the class since you have switched my meals with traps. Don't think I didn't notice. He stated before standing in front of Naruto's desk. However, your prank did piss a lot of people off, so I have to punish you. All I can say is that you're going to have to go and clean up all the props, okay? After that, head home and get some rest. I know you didn't get much sleep last night anyways. He stated clearly. Naruto nodded before quickly tossing an empty scroll over the pile of props. Throwing on his fox-like grin, Iruka could only wonder. This is something I had picked up a few years ago. Since you asked me to show my potential, I think you would enjoy this, Iruka-sensei. Naruto flew through seals before pressing the scroll into the props. In a cloud of smoke, the props disappeared, leaving a tied scroll on the floor. Iruka was astonished. By all rights, that sealing shouldn't have been done by a genin, let alone a chunin. It was a low jonin skill used for sealing up camps, or even then used for sealing up proof of catching criminals by hunter nin. Yet here he was astonished by Naruto, who simply made about 400 pounds of props disappear into the scroll. I was taught this to hide all my precious stuff after people ransacked my apartment. Here you go, Iruka. The 12-year-old ninja to be stated before tossing the scroll towards the teacher. Anyways, that's for you to keep. Besides, you looked really cool as a lion. Well, see you later, Iruka-sensei. Naruto chided before rushing home. When he arrived, he gasped seeing a few chunin walking away from his apartment. Growling, he snuck past them and inside to find his house in disarray. Furniture was overturned. His pictures were torn and left scattered throughout the apartment. His walls were filled with spray paint calling him a demon and other things. Even worse was that his weapons were missing, the ones he had received as a gift. He growled heavily, his anger getting to him. He looked around for Kitsu for a moment before finding her hiding underneath his bed and in a corner. His bed was shredded beyond belief, and even more so was every knick-knack that he had broken or tossed about. Throwing his bed to the side in anger, he picked up the scared two-tailed fox before cuddling her. The Kyuubi apparently was asleep inside her, but Maki on the other hand was terrified. It's okay, Mika-ni-chan. I'm sick of this crap. I'm just so sick of people treating me like I'm a goddamn demon. Like I'm worth nothing more than trash. I swear that they are gonna apologize one way or another. With that, he hugged the little fox, trying to comfort it before looking down. The fox was not only hiding, but managed to protect the most precious of his items. His tools, which he had thought were stolen, were peeking out of a floorboard, as well as his jutsu scrolls. Even more so was his notebook and a few items Tsunade had given him. He hugged the little fox even closer before setting her on his shoulder. She was larger now, but not large enough to sit on. Instead, she just curled around his neck, letting her hind legs rest on his right shoulder while her front legs and head rested on his left shoulder. Tonight we are going to do the biggest prank after I beat the crap out of those assholes who did this to our home, believe it. he stated before grabbing his gloves and sliding them on. He filled his pouches with scrolls as well as his kunai and shuriken. They wanted a reason to demean him. He was going to give them one and a few painful lessons while he was at it. Before he could even leave out the door, he watched as the Hokage himself entered. "Old man, what are you doing here? I came upon getting a report of massive chakra fluctuation here. Now I see why. Do you know who did this?" the Hokage asked. In truth, he was irate, pulled away from enjoying a leisurely night of calligraphy which he had enjoyed with all fervor. It was some 4 chunin, all wearing headgear, black hair, brown eyes, judging from how clean their vests were, new chunin. Naruto stated. The Hokage nodded, knowing exactly who they were at the mention of new chunin, the only 4 that had passed during the exams. As much as I hate the fact that my privacy was broken, I'm more pissed that people still do this. Naruto yelled out as he picked up a photo of Jiraiya, Tsunade, Shizune, and him near a waterfall. It used to show them being happy and enjoying the moment, however what really showed now was the words demon whores and demon fag. It was one thing to mock him, but another to do such to his precious friends and family. He sighed for a moment, sitting down on his disheveled couch as tears slipped out of his eyes as he looked at the photo. "This isn't the first time that it's happened before?" Sarutobi asked. He began to wonder just how many times it's happened before, and before he could ask just how many, Naruto tossed him the picture. "At least 20 times in the past 3 years. It gets worse around my birthday, but never like this," he stated. "Old man, I know we are short on ninja and everything, but don't kill those bastards. If anything, I got a better punishment in mind for them, hee." Naruto smirked. It wasn't his "I'm better than you" smirk commonly known to the Hyuga or Uchiha. It was a smirk of a true prankster. "They hate a fox so much, huh? Then I say we make them a fox." He chuckled before unfurling a scroll. In it popped fox costumes out, that all stated in kanji, "I'm too foxy to be a ninja." After all, what better punishment to bang their pride about a little hee. Sarutobi chuckled at the boy's idea and nodded before turning around and ordering the Anbu to catch the 4. The crowd was aghast as 4 ninja who had recently earned their respected rank of chunin walked through the village, each held by a leash around their necks by Anbu. Their outfits were bright orange and made to look like foxes. Whiskers were drawn on their cheeks and the kanji was in bright blue. To the 4 chunin it was humiliating. A fate worse than death, as the crowd began to toss fruit at the 4 and at the Anbu. They then realized just how horrible it felt. It was so big a blow to the pride that they just hung their heads down in shame as the Anbu turned towards the crowd. These 4 chunin are hereby demoted to genin by orders of the Hokage for breaking and entering of a fellow citizen of Konoha. They have in turn done great harm to the whole of the community by doing such, and thus that is one reason why they are stripped of their rank and hereby on probation for 3 years before they can once again obtain the rank of chunin should the council or the Hokage deem it. The outfits, however, were a punishment sent on them by the victim of the crime, and thusly they are not allowed to take it off for a week. The Anbu yelled out over the crowd. This is the punishment that is called forth by anyone who attempts to do such again, as dictated by the Hokage. With that he led the fox parade throughout all of Konoha before returning them each to their own homes, ensuring that none of them would dare to do such again. Naruto watched with glee, as did Sarutobi from his gazing crystalline ball at the event before they both fell over laughing. "Hey old man, I gotta get going soon. Oh, and thanks for helping me with cleaning up my apartment. I'm just glad you showed up instead of Oba-chan or Ero Sennin. I don't want those guys' deaths to be on my conscience, that's for sure. Besides, I got one more prank to pull to the village before I graduate. Just don't be surprised if it's so big that you get angry," he stated. Sarutobi chuckled at the boy. Indeed, it was common for Naruto to inform Hokage of village-wide pranks, especially when trying to plan them out. Who knew the Hokage would enjoy helping the kid with them? "Oi Naruto, hold on for a second. I forgot to ask you, how have you been doing with that jutsu? It's hard as hell, but I still haven't given up. It's like forming a complete bushin, but I still can't seem to get the proportions right, old man," Naruto stated. Sarutobi blinked for a moment. Naruto was supposed to be a genius, but even then, without learning its primary beginning skill, the boy was already progressing faster than ever. It was true that the one skill it takes to master the shadow weapon multiplication technique was the shadow clone replication jutsu, but to do so without was incredibly tough but rewarding in its own entirety. Naruto, you keep surprising me even more, Sarutobi stated as he chuckled to himself. Besides, if he does get caught, which happens only when Iruka catches him, he ends up cleaning up the harmless pranks anyways. Even then, old man, I can't seem to make a bunchin either. All of them turn out like a massive blob or don't appear no matter how hard I concentrate or how much chakra I use. I just hope it isn't like the last 3 tests. The Fox Keeper stated. You will do fine, Naruto, just believe in yourself and do your best. Well, I'm afraid that you must go home. Don't worry, I'm quite sure that lesson taught the villagers to leave your stuff alone. If it doesn't, well, I'm quite sure we will have plenty of costumes for them to wear, don't we? He chuckled before picking up his pipe, filling it with his favorite flavored tobacco and lighting it. Naruto nodded before waving as he exited the office. To be young and no longer in charge of a village. I would rather be glad to not have to do this insane amount of paperwork. He stated before turning around and looking at the unending pile of work before him. Sighing, he went back to the task at hand. Naruto ran happily for his life. He knew that if the Anbu and Chunin who were chasing after him caught him, he would be put into a world of hurt. However, to him it was another bright and beautiful day in Konoha. Everything was peaceful and tranquil. Every villager that didn't know him hated and despised him. The Hokage mountains were painted with graffiti. To Naruto it was all as it should be, yet now he was running for his life, though to him it was training. His chakra weights were on, and thus making him slow enough to be just a little bit beyond their grasp. You little brat, get back here. They yelled out as he pulled ahead. What, I think they needed some color. Besides, you can't catch the future Hokage. What kinda Hokage gets caught by Anbu and Chunin? He yelled out as he turned a corner. Removing a large canvas from his utility pouch, he held it up, swiftly weaving chakra into it, causing him to blend in with the fence as those who gave chase continued to run past him. He turned his head up towards the monument, smiling warmly at his work. Each of the Hokage had different designs. Some had swirls on their cheeks, others looked like they were crying. Even the Sandame's face looked like he had a nosebleed, as well as pervert written on his forehead. The fourth was also painted with surpassed by Uzumaki Naruto. Yet the ones that had the most paint were the first 2 Hokage. To Naruto it was a work of art, and a testament to his skill. He smiled before releasing the D-guise and folding it up to put it back into his pouch. Too easy. Oh really? A voice came from behind Naruto. There was only one person in all those that Naruto knew that could catch him that easily. The one person who he looked up to as a fatherly figure and as a great friend. One Amino Iruka, who stood behind him as he turned his head. The mont's arms were cocked with his fists resting on his waist. His head swelled with anger as he began to yell at Naruto, enraged that the boy defaced the vigilant reminder of Konoha's past to its people. His scar on his face being proof of what he was and what he was meant to be, a ninja. Oi, Iruka-sensei, let me go, aren't you supposed to be teaching right now? Naruto chided out as he was hog-tied and thrown over Iruka's shoulder like a sack of potatoes. Naruto tried to wriggle free, but even then it was no use when Iruka caught you. Yeah, and you're supposed to be in class too, idiot. Iruka replied. After a few minutes they arrived at the class only to find the students in disarray. Well, more so the female population of the class swarming over Sasuke, while everyone else was grumbling about how the Uchiha always gets the girls. Shikamaru was busy looking out the window up at the clouds. Choji was eating once again. Kiba and Akamaru were laughing at Sasuke. Hinata, on the other hand, was poking her fingers together the moment she noticed Naruto, a faint blush on her cheeks as her imagination was running wild. Well, as wild as a 12-year-old girl in puberty. Shino was busy listening to his bugs, while Sakura and Ino were busy trying to woo Sasuke into a date. Alright class, since our time got cut in half thanks to a pranking delinquent, we are going to practice transformations. Everyone line up, he yelled out as he dropped Naruto unceremoniously on the ground. First up, Haruno Sakura. Naruto, this is all your fault, you idiot. Ino yelled out. Naruto just ignored it and gazed at his handiwork while Sakura stood at the first in line of the class. She concentrated her chakra before doing the standard seal. Transform, she calmly stated. As the smoke appeared around her, it took a moment before it dissipated, leaving her in the form of an exact duplicate of Iruka. Iruka nodded before marking off past on his clipboard. Cha, see that, Sasuke-kun? I'm bad, Inner Sakura stated while doing a dance showing off how awesome she was. Good job. Next, Uchiha Sasuke. Iruka stated before looking over Sasuke. The raven-haired boy unfurled his hands from his pockets before performing the necessary seals and called out transform. His form exploded into smoke, which heralded the use of such a jutsu. After the smoke cleared, there stood another exact duplicate of Iruka. Good job. Next, Uzumaki Naruto. Iruka yelled out. Naruto grinned before stepping forward. The whole class watched him with feverish intent, wondering what stupid act the preteen was going to do now. Hinata merely watched Naruto, silently wishing him luck as she hoped he would do so. To her, Naruto's undying will to keep trying and prove himself gave her courage when she needed it. It gave her the drive to keep going despite her already lacking self-esteem. In truth, at first when they were younger she saw him as a friend, someone who was happy like she, but as her family had gained tragedy at every turn, her once loud and enthusiastic cheers of being a girl fell away, leaving her a shell of self-loathing, devoid of self-confidence, and severely upset to the point she would often cry herself to sleep whenever her father or anyone else hinted at her failures. Yet here she stood admiring the amount of courage Naruto had. It was no wonder that soon she had developed a crush on him, after a while, yet deep down it had grown into full bloom, showing her love for the estranged and loud-mouthed prankster of Konoha. While she was watching Naruto was gathering whiffs of chakra up into his body before forming the seals necessary. If anyone who watched the seals carefully, they didn't match the normal transformation jutsu, and thus when smoke curled around him for a moment, they began to disperse save for a few wafts. Instead of Iruka standing there as the other students had done, there stood a rather well-proportional, defined white blonde in pigtails, with whiskers adding to her allure. If this wasn't enough, the wisps of smoke barely hid away what wasn't left to the imagination due to lack of clothing, her feminine features. When Naruto reverted the form, he was busy laughing at Iruka, who was jettisoned to the wall via blood rockets coming from his nose. Haha, how did you like my Waijutsu? Little did Naruto know that every boy there, including the stoic Shino, was in the same position as Iruka, knocked out with blood tendrils coming from their nose. Iruka grumbled before getting up. Swiftly he twisted up 2 pieces of tissue before shoving them into his already still bleeding nose before pounding his fist into the back of Naruto's head. Don't practice stupid jutsu, idiot! He yelled, the genjutsu finally wearing off while the rest of the class went back to their seats after performing the transformation jutsu. Most of the boys there along with the girls were glaring at Naruto while Shino was arching his eyebrows at the prankster. Naruto grumbled about the bump on the back of his head and the glares while Iruka continued to instruct the class. Only a few hours later Naruto was still sitting in the classroom, even after everyone had left. It would seem that he was at detention Aegean. Oi Naruto, as punishment you are going to clean off all the paint off the monument. Iruka yelled while dragging an already fuming Naruto towards his punishment. I don't care if it takes you all night, you aren't going home until you're done, brat. He yelled up at the blonde who was scrubbing the paint off. Naruto continued to grumble before turning around. It's not like I have any parents or family other than Mika who's gonna be there for me anyways. He yelled back. He turned back around and continued to grumble about ungrateful teachers, lonely homes, amongst other things. Even going so far as to grumble about the mixture of his paint, which hardened like steel. Iruka on the other hand just stared flabbergasted at Naruto. A look of guilt showing deeply upon his face as he realized what he had said. It was true, Naruto was an orphan and for a good half of his life didn't have anyone save the legendary pervert, medic, and her apprentice for him. Even then it was a harsh life, going from town to town. He had read the unofficial report from the Hokage himself how Naruto was nearly assassinated multiple times, had lived on the streets, amongst other things. That was what broke him out of his hatred for the boy and see him in a new light. Look Naruto, I know what it's like to not go home and have a family waiting for you. I'm sorry I spouted off and said that. Tell you what, the sooner you finish, I will take you out for as much ramen as you want, okay? He absent-mindedly fingered his wallet. He couldn't help but feel like by the time it was done it was going to be rather empty. Now that's what I'm talking about. Naruto chided before kicking himself into overdrive. Grabbing the paint remover as well as rolling up his sleeves, he began his work with renewed fervor. To him he would do anything in the world, save go against his word for ramen, and thusly he put more effort into it. Soon enough the monument was clean of paint, and even more so was a tired, struggling Naruto. Iruka kept his word as he walked beside Naruto to the only ramen stand that they both liked, Ikaraku's. "Hey old man, I'm going to have 4 miso ramens, 4 pork, 4 beef, and 4 chicken." He cheered as he sat down. Iruka gulped before sitting down as well. Within a few minutes the ramen they both ordered was placed before them. "Ichidakamasu," was the unison call given. "Naruto, you know why the Hokage monument is there, right? It's a memorial to the village and to the Hokage who have supported and lead the village to what it is now." Naruto mumbled before mouthfuls of ramen. "So then why did you deface it like that?" Iruka asked. He was rather curious as to why a student who wanted to be Hokage would do such a thing. "Because I want to be better than the Hokage, to be the best there is so I can be acknowledged and not be disrespected anymore. I want to be Hokage because everyone looks up to them," he whispered before taking in another mouthful of ramen. He then looked over at Iruka before smiling. "Iruka-sensei, can I ask you a favor? If it's about the ramen I'm already treating you, if not then what is it? Can I try out your forehead protector please?" Naruto asked, giving the biggest set of puppy dog eyes ever seen. Iruka shook his head, ignoring the look before turning towards his own ramen. "I can't let you do that because you're not a ninja yet. That's why you have to do your best tomorrow and pass the test," Iruka stated before ruffling the pouting and sulking blonde's head. "In any case, if you're done eating I will take you home. Who knows, with how hard you practice you might just be able to master the clone jutsu at the test," he stated as he tried to bring up the blonde's dampening mood. He then smiled before pulling out his wallet while Naruto patted his full stomach, which in the case was true considering the blonde genin had quite a few empty bowls beside him. If ramen were alive, they would fear the very devil in front of them. After all, to eat 12 bowls of ramen in one sitting was no easy feat, even for an Akamichi. Smiling warmly he paid, with all that he had before promising the shopkeeper that he would bring the rest of the payment as soon as he got paid again in a week. Such just smiled and nodded, adding it to the boy's ever-growing tab after all. He didn't mind, especially since it was true that Naruto was the old man's #1 customer, as well as biggest contributor when it came to profit. Smiling, he carefully took Naruto to his apartment before wishing the said student of his a good night. Naruto's pet fox, or as he called it his sister, smirked warmly at Iruka before yawning and retiring to Naruto's room. Over the years Naruto had become used to having the said fox rest on his chest while he slept. After all, siblings did often sleep in the same bed when young, so he felt no reason otherwise. Naruto yawned as he sat at his desk. He was once again finding himself bored of the same lecture on how a genin is a beginning shinobi and that they in truth are the new blood of the strength of a village. That each genin would eventually become ranked higher for their strength and accomplishments, even a few going on to become legendary as Sannin or better still, as a Kage. He had heard this lecture 3 times before and inside his mind had gone over it each time the day was brought up. However, in the recesses of his mind he was worried over the simplest of things. He still couldn't figure out how to do a single usable bushin, the simplest of jutsu by academy standards. It was his failing quality that had driven him to having failed the genin test twice before. He had no desire to do it a 3rd time, and it was a jutsu that he never once gave up on. However, he could only be hopeful that this year they wouldn't give him that same test. That it would be something like a substitution or transformation jutsu. However, before that he had to go and take the written test. He grumbled as he looked over the questions, each one being harder than the last according to him. The years before he would never have suspected that the teachers would give him Junin-level written tests while other students took the true tests. As he looked over the answers he felt like tearing his hair out of his skull. He couldn't believe Iruka would give him such a hard test, yet unbeknownst to him, it wasn't Iruka who had given out the written portion. It was his aide, Mizuki. While Mizuki was not a sensei officially, he was granted the authority to overview and watch the tests. Even hand them out and grade based on performance. Iruka knew this, and as his fellow shinobi and friend he allowed Mizuki to hand out the tests while he prepared for the hand-to-hand combat. Smiling, Iruka left the room, but not before issuing a warning to the class that cheating would not be tolerated. After an hour of racking his mind, Naruto barely managed to answer a quarter of the questions on the test before the time was up. He grumbled before sighing. "All I have to do is pass the 3 other parts of the exam and I can become a full-fledged ninja, believe it," he yelled in his mind. Filing out of the classroom, the students handed in their papers to Mizuki, who held his hands out. Naruto at the last of the line stood and handed it in before grumbling about stupid tests being too hard. He walked with the rest out into taijutsu training room. Mizuki on the other hand looked at Naruto's test before smirking. With a sleight of hand he had switched it out with the right test, however the written answers were placed upon it, conveying the wrong answers. Taking that same Junin level test, he tossed it haphazardly into the trash can beside Iruka's desk before setting the rest of the tests on the desk. Smirking confidently, he walked outside to join Iruka. Alright, we will begin the second stage of the Genin exam. This stage is the taijutsu test. You are to land one blow on me. Seeing as all of you are potential genin, you must do your best and come at me with the intent to kill or harm me, but do not underestimate me either. Iruka yelled out as he stood up in the ring. If you fail to land a blow in 5 minutes or knock me out of the ring, you failed this portion of the exam. With that he got into a defensive stance. First up, Aburame Shino. Mizuki yelled out. The stoic black-haired bug user stood up before getting into the ring. Immediately he stood in a standard taijutsu stance. Iruka nodded, signaling the beginning of the exam while waiting for the oncoming attack. He remembered that the Aburame were revered as insect users, and with the amount of insects they kept inside their bodies, they too had the combined strength of insects. After all, if you had millions of ants who could lift 10 times their own weight inside you, imagine if those millions of ants converged and sent out the same amount of force in a punch. He also remembered what happened when Shibi, Shino's father, participated in the exam. The current head of the Aburame clan had easily knocked his Chunin examiner not only out of the ring, but out of the school as well. Iruka held up a hand for a moment before ushering a word of caution. Bear in mind that all it takes is a single blow, be it a glancing or otherwise you pass. He stated clearly, yet his intent was effectively sent. Go easy on me, I don't want to end up in the hospital. Shino, who had studied insects, had picked up the underlying message in Iruka's words before rushing at the Chunin. Taijutsu between them was an artful dance of legs, fists, knees and elbows. After 2 minutes Shino had found his opening and swiftly struck Iruka in the side with a backhand. It was not enough to send the Chunin out of the school, but enough to effectively send the Chunin sprawling out of the ring. With that, Shino got out of his stance, bowed before heading back to classroom. Iruka stood up and secretly thanked the genin for having enough sense to hold back that punch. With that he stood back up in the ring awaiting the next person. Next up, Choji Akamichi. The blue-haired Chunin examiner stated. Choji finished off his chips before smirking and getting into the ring. He bowed to Iruka, who in turn did the same before getting into the standard taijutsu stance. However, Choji had a large smile upon his face. Multi-size, both-arm taijutsu. With that, Choji led his arms straight forward before they swelled up with chakra. Within moments, arms as big as boulders were in the arena stood in front of him. Choji continued to smile before swiftly pushing Iruka out of the ring. He smiled, releasing the enhancement before pulling out another bag of chips from his pocket. Well, you did get me out of the ring, so you pass. Iruka stated before rubbing the back of his head. He should have learned beforehand that with an Akamichi in territory, you don't want to be in that area. Swiftly he got himself back into position. Sakura Haruno, you're up, was announced. The said Kunoichi nodded before standing up. Her red dress fluttered with her steps as he emerald eyes looked at her teacher warily. Her bright pink hair bounced with every step as she stood in the ring. Sakura knew taijutsu wasn't her best field of study, seeing as she was extremely smart, resourceful, and very familiar with genjutsu. Taijutsu on the other hand just never stick with her all too well. That was apparent when her match started. As blows were blocked and exchanged, she barely managed to land a good solid glance on Iruka seconds before the buzzer went off, signaling the match was over due to time. She cheered inwardly before taking her seat with her fellow students. Alright then, Hinata Hyuga, your turn. The aforementioned heiress to the Hyuga clan bowed respectfully before standing up. Her gaze locked onto the floor as she made her way into the ring. A glance over at her aspiration and friend Naruto gave her a moment's strength as she could feel him watching her, silently cheering her on inside her mind. I have to do this if I want to be strong like Naruto-kun. Slowly she stood in the tradition Jukin stance, nodding to her sensei she was ready. She was inwardly glad that all she had to do was land a single blow, be it glancing or otherwise. With a nod from her sensei, she rushed at him, timidly blocking his strikes with her arms as she danced. Unbeknownst to her, Naruto watched in awe, admiring her grace and form. Even though she was timidly doing anything to him, it was like watching fluid motion of water throughout the world. Within 2.5 minutes, Iruka held up a hand to stop the match. He shook his shoulder and wrist, noting how painful they felt. He then conceded to her, stating that she had won based on the fact that if she used her style to its fullness with chakra, she could have easily killed him. While it was true that a Hyuga could easily use their style to debilitate and kill, she held back, considering that even a glancing blow on the shoulder could kill a person if enough chakra were forced downwardly. "Hinata, you won that match because of your abilities as a Hyuga. Even without using chakra, you disabled my arm, so do your best for the remainder of the exam, okay? Everyone, let's take a 15-minute break," Iruka stated before wincing and rubbing feeling back into his right arm. He couldn't help but feel pride in his students thus far. After all, he did feel that they would be the future leaders of Konoha and that he was the one to help nurture their abilities. After the 15 minutes, he managed to have his arm restored to its previous state before setting himself a reminder to inform Hiyashi that his daughter did excellent on the exam. Though it was true Hinata didn't beat her cousin's time the year before, but then her cousin had managed to debilitate him within seconds, would be hard for anyone to beat, but also used chakra to do so. He once again found himself in the ring again, waiting for the next student. It didn't take long for a certain beast user to step into the ring, knowing all too well that this match would be swift. Inuzuka were prided on their speed and fierceness. Nodding, he barely had a few seconds before being forced out of the ring, via an elbow to his sternum, which sent him tumbling back. Kiba smirked before cheering for himself as he found his way to his seat with his dog Akamaru waiting there. Rubbing his chest for a moment, Iruka went back to the ring before smiling. Last time he had such a blow done to him, it was by a person who was considered dead last year. A person known as Rock Lee. With that, he continued on through the rest of the students before the last three stood waiting. Next up, Naruto Uzumaki. Iruka nodded before standing at the ready position. Naruto grinned his normal fox grin. "Iruka-sensei, I'm going to take your advice and show you and the rest of the class why I should be Hokage." With that, Naruto grinned before getting down into a low stance. "I'm going to be Hokage, believe it." With that, Naruto waited until the signal was given before rushing in. Iruka's eyes widened before he found himself spinning backwards, having found the back of Naruto's knuckles driving themselves into Iruka's neck, sending the Chunin examiner sprawling onto the floor. Naruto stood up, rubbing the back of his head with his right hand while extending his left hand down to the dazed Chunin. "Naruto, what the hell was that?" Iruka stammered out, amazed at how fast and precise the blow was. Naruto helped him up before whispering into Iruka's ear the answer. "That is a style I mastered before I started the academy, but was told not to use. Uzumaki Fox Kenpo." He grinned before walking back to his seat, leaving behind his students blinking, including a rather interested Uchiha who wondered what happened. Iruka grinned sheepishly before looking at the timer. The dobi of the class had successfully not only landed a blow to the Chunin but also did so, breaking the record that was held by the previous Rookie of the Year. One Hyuga Neji by a second. "Oi, what are you all looking at? I said I was going to do my best, so I did. A Hokage has to be strong, ya know." Iruka smiled inwardly, nodding before rubbing his sore neck. He knew he would be feeling this one later on, but was glad that all examiners were checked out by medics after the exams were over, since it was fairly common for them to get injured. With that, he found himself facing off the best student in his class. One who excelled in all the categories. One Uchiha Sasuke. "Ready when you are, Sasuke," Iruka stated. Sasuke nodded with a smirk as he got into the infamous Uchiha interrupter stance. The timer was started, and before long the student and teacher were trading blows. However, within a minute that same Uchiha walked out of the circle, leaving a confused class. That was until Iruka held his ribs, nodding. "As expected of a student of your caliber. Though you only needed one blow, not three." The teacher chided while Sasuke shrugged. "If you leave yourself open for more than one blow, why should a ninja not take it?" was the reply that came from Sasuke as he shoved his hands into his pockets and leaned against a nearby pillar. Iruka shook his head, having bearing the bluntness of arrogance that the Uchiha were known for. He stood up, exhaling sharply as he set his ribs back in place naturally before finding himself standing in front of his last student. Yamanaka Ino. She wore a big grin on her face as she stood in the standard stance of taijutsu taught by the academy. Her platinum blonde hair shimmering in the sunlight as her sky-blue eyes watched her teacher. Smirking to herself, she waited to hear the clock start before rushing her teacher. Like her rival, she fought with all her strength, willing to prove to her crush that she would win Sasuke. She was an arrogant and vain girl. One who prided herself on beauty. However, a rose does have its thorns, as they say, and it proved true when she landed a dirty blow, one that had most of the men in the class cringing in sympathetic pain while Iruka yelped, crouching forward. As the guys there yelled, she smirked before yelling back, "You guys leave yourselves open there. Far be it for a pretty girl to capitalize on hitting you where it hurts." She viciously yelled back. Iruka took his time before standing, nursing his groin from the blow. He grumbled before admitting that she did have a point, as ninja were often to use every trick they knew to get their opponent. She smirked before walking up to her rival and gloating about her faster time in beating her opponent. This of course led to name-calling before coming to blows, as their most hated names were often used. Before long, both Mizuki and Iruka, who had gotten over his injury, stepped in and pulled the two brawling kunoichi away from each other. With that being done, the teachers smiled before having wooden practice dummies brought in. Each had their vital points marked in red konoha leaves. Mizuki in turn handed out the kunai and shuriken sets, 4 each for all of the students, leaving the 8 vital points: the spleen, heart, lungs, kidneys, liver, neck, and brain as their targets. To be sure of each, they had the students form a firing line, yet have their targets far enough that no interference from their throws would happen. As thus each student began to throw. Whereas some students weren't rather accurate, they did manage to hit the leaves, signaling that the point was scored as a bad wound. The most impressive, however, were from Sasuke, as his targets were cleanly hit, each in the bullseye in the center of the leaves with the appropriate depth to signify that it was a very clean kill. Hinata, through the use of her own special bloodline trait, also struck each with honed accuracy, yet not quite as deep duetto the lack of physical strength. Naruto, on the other hand, his showed special attention, as he had clearly not only went into the target but left deep gashes spiraling out from the leaves as his kunai and shuriken went handle deep, or fully blade deep within the wood. It was clear who was the accurate and powerful, yet when Iruka checked, he couldn't help but feel that Naruto would do the most damage with his own specialized shuriken and kunai, as the after damage showed that if it were a living person, their internal organs would be beyond medical repair. With the shuriken and kunai marksmanship out of the way, he smiled before leading the students back towards the classroom. Smiling, he had each student stand outside in alphabetical order before calling them in for the last test. A test of standard genin jutsu, being none other than Naruto's most hated of techniques. The clone jutsu. Things went as they had, the passing students walking out with their forehead protectors proudly displayed, while others sulked. When at last Naruto's time came, he groaned inwardly as he stepped into the classroom. "Relax and concentrate, Naruto. All you have to do is make 2 clones. You can do it," Iruka stated with confidence. Naruto nodded before forming the concentration seal, his chakra riveting out of his body in a pale blue wave as he closed his eyes. Running through his own body, he concentrated all his chakra and his hope into forming the clone. "Come on, Naruto, I know you can do it," Iruka stated in his own mind. Naruto opened his eyes carefully before forming the appropriate seal before calling the technique out. Clone jutsu. His voice spoke mostly of confidence, yet had some doubt within it, having just a small tinge of doubt in himself. "I can do this, I have to do this if I am going to be the next Hokage, believe it." As the smoke poured out around him, he closed his eyes in hope. He really did not want to have to repeat the next year with students younger than him. To have to repeat his failures, to be picked on, to be made fun of. Mizuki stated as the smoke began to clear, their eyes drawn to the sight before them. Naruto sighed as he looked down at the supposed clone he had made. It was nothing more than a blob-like ghastly version of him. Drool poured out of its mouth as its eyes looked randomly, glazed in a death-like trance. Even more so was the fact it was pale, and the stench about it palpable was disgustingly gross. The smell could only be attributed to rotten eggs, mixed with Maida Guy's teenage gym shoes, with the perfume of a skunk. The rest of the class paled before leaning out of the window trying to retch what meals they had earlier up. Iruka held his nose gasping for air as the toxic fumes burned into his lungs. Mizuki shook his head and looked towards Naruto with sympathy. You fail now, get rid of that thing. Iruka yelled. Naruto did the release sign and watched as the smell, the clone, and the ghastly mess it made disappear. Even Mizuki's pleads to Iruka fell upon his deafened ears to let the kid pass. Iruka wouldn't have it because in a ninja life, things like that will get an inept ninja killed. Inside, Iruka was upset. He knew how hard Naruto tried, how fierce the determination was in Naruto, but rules were rules, and truthfully he didn't want to pass Naruto until he was sure Naruto could survive. Come on Iruka, he did his best, and this is his third time. He did manage to make one clone. He did well on the taijutsu exam as well as marksmanship. Surely you can let him pass. Mizuki stated before Naruto turned and ran out the door, his eyes glistening with tears that had not yet fallen. The echoes of laughter filled the hallways as the classes laughed at him, laughing at his failure at such a simple jutsu. Naruto bit back his tears, forcing them to go away back into his body as he climbed onto the swing that was his own. Minutes later, the students walked out of the school to their awaiting parents who had pride in their eyes for those who had passed, as well as consolidated those who didn't, telling them that they were proud nonetheless. Naruto watched, feeling totally and utterly alone. His ears straining to hear words of encouragement, however what he heard only made him feel the pains of loneliness and despair. Hey, isn't that the brat? One mother asked. So he didn't pass, who would allow a duh? Don't say that, you know it's forbidden. Besides, if that brat became a ninja, who knows what hell would befall us. Another mother interjected, stating an unwritten law but also her fears as well as hatred of Naruto. Hinata could only look towards the swing as her father was in deep conversation with Iruka, judging her accomplishments. Come daughter, we must go home. His words strolled out into her ears as she nodded before following, her mind deep in worry for her secret crush and best friend. Naruto looked on before listening to a rustle of leaves above him. It took me some doing, but there is a way that you can still pass. Iruka agreed to it, seeing as you did so well on the marksmanship and taijutsu portion of the test. He's just angry at you for all those pranks you pulled. I will tell you about it away from here, okay? Mizuki stated with a compassionate face. Inwardly he was smirking with glee, having found the perfect target to do the job for him. As they leapt from rooftop to rooftop, he began to explain to Naruto that the secret test involved a rather large scroll that held the secret arts of the village. Jutsus that were powerful, and that all Naruto had to do was learn just one of them. With that, Mizuki and Naruto split ways before the afternoon wore on. Naruto huddled up against a tree as dusk soon approached. Before him lay a scroll as large as he was, unfurled and open to his eyes to read. He inwardly began to grumble as his brow furrowed in concentration, his face a mask of seriousness as he began to read off a list of jutsu from the scroll. Well damn, these all require heavy amounts of chakra. Even the shadow clone jutsu says that it could kill me if I use too much. Good thing I've got a lot of chakra. With that being stated in his mind, he began to work tirelessly on the jutsu. His mind soaking up the information like a proverbial sponge as he went over all the possibilities before even attempting them. Forming his fingers into a cross, he began to ritual known to him as trial and error. Kit, with your chakra you should be able to master this in no time. Heck, it might be the answer to the riddle of the weapon shadow clone jutsu which the old Hokage gave you a few years ago. Don't worry, if you even come close to chakra depletion I will supply you with more than enough. Though if I were you I wouldn't trust that silver-haired lout. Kitsu spoke in his mind, causing his concentration to falter. He looked up for a moment before replying. I know you don't trust many Kitsune-chan, but if this will help me become a genin that means I will do what I have to in order to become Hokage. He replied to the worried Kitsune in his head. As the hours rolled by and after many attempts and failures he could see his work taking form and smiled as he successfully mastered the jutsu. Getting it right, he couldn't believe just how simple it was. He smiled reading a few more notes on the jutsu before smirking like a true fox. Cool, this will make training easier too. With the amount of shadow clones I use, the training will be cut by that number. Believe it, he yelled in his mind. The fox inside him chuckled at his antics before smiling. However, unknown to him, someone was closing in on his location. Rolling the scroll up as he felt the hairs on his neck prickles him. Being used to this sense, he turned his head as one person who truly recognized him appeared from the foliage. Naruto, what are you doing out here? Do you know what you have done? Iruka bit out, his tone concerned but fierce at the same time. Hi Iruka-sensei, I already learned and mastered one jutsu from the scroll. I can show you so I can pass and become a true ninja. Naruto stated happily. Naruto, who told you that? Iruka asked, confusion marring his face. Mizuki-sensei said that if I took the scroll of secret jutsu and learned one jutsu from it that I could pass and become a ninja. The blonde replied. Iruka blinked before hearing the whine of metal coming through the air before leaping in front of his student, bracing him from the attack. Kunai came from behind, striking his shoulders and piercing his left thigh, pinning him effectively to the ground. What's going on, Iruka-sensei? The fox ninja questioned as he watched his teacher grunt in pain. Iruka, I'm surprised you got here first, but that's okay. Naruto, hand me the scroll. The blue-haired Chunin stated with a sickening sweet smile. Naruto looked on with confusion even more, however, before he could reply, let alone do anything. Naruto, don't give him the scroll, take it and run to the Hokage. The scarred ninja instructor barked out. Iruka, I'm surprised. Naruto, hand me the scroll and you can pass. Iruka, Zhu doesn't want you to pass. The smiling Chunin stated, though his eyes grew dark with each word. Naruto, that scroll is forbidden and secret. Mizuki wants it so he can gain power that he doesn't deserve. Now run, please. Bah, this is going nowhere. If you don't hand me the scroll, then I'm going to have to do a service to Konoha and kill you. His smile turned into a daring and dark smirk. However, I am not without a little mercy. I will tell you why the village hates you. Why no one wants to see you alive. Why Iruka never passed you. He stated as he unfurled a rather large 4-starred shuriken from his back. Spinning it in his hand, he looked down at his target with a deadly glare. Mizuki, stop, you know it's forbidden. Wah, what are you talking about, Mizuki-sensei? Naruto, the reason why everyone hates you because you are the Kyuubi reincarnated. You are the demon that destroyed Konoha 12 years ago. Iruka hates you because you killed his parents, now die. With those words he hurled the shuriken towards Naruto, its blade coming faster and faster as it spun with deadly grace. Naruto closed his eyes awaiting the strike. He was frozen in place with the words he couldn't believe. He knew that he and the Kyuubi were separate, but he also knew that people only viewed him as the said demon, and that Iruka thought he was the person who took away his teacher's parents. After a moment longer than it should have been, the moment he should have felt pain, he felt liquid splash upon his cheek. Opening his eyes, he looked up only to see Iruka crouched over him, blood dripping down from his shoulders as a small rivulet of blood dripped down the Chunin's back, cascading down the side and onto his sides. The massive shuriken embedded just slightly beside the ninja instructor's spine and right shoulder blade. Naruto, forgive me, it was true that I hated the Kyuubi once, but I know what it's like to go home to be alone. To do pranks to gain attention because of how painful it is to be alone. So please run, Iruka cried. Naruto nodded as he grabbed the scroll close to his chest and ran, his legs carrying him as swiftly and tirelessly as he could, further into the foliage. Mizuki growled to himself before placing his hands upon the other shuriken on his back. However, before he could unfurl it, Iruka grunted, ripping the said shuriken in his back out before hurling it at Mizuki, a desperate attempt to keep Naruto out of harm's way. Mizuki stepped to the side, avoiding the incoming projectile with a smirk. Looks like you aren't going to save the demon anymore, Iruka. I will come back and finish you off after I take care of him. With that, Mizuki jumped towards the direction Naruto had left, jumping from tree to tree. Iruka grunted, pulling the kunai out of his thigh before chasing after, praying with all his heart that Naruto would continue going towards the village and ultimately to the Hokage. Naruto weaved in and out of trees, using latent stealth techniques garnished from 6 years with legendary Sannin, as well as being the ever-so unpredictable prankster that always found a way to elude Chunin, Junin, and Anbu alike. He would have smirked and cheered at that accomplishment if he weren't fleeing for his life, confused and alone. He wished that his two sensei were here right now, but knew that they weren't. They each had their own missions to do, as well as his pride. He did, but he didn't want to rely on them for everything. That would not make him Hokage. Finding the sense of danger off of him for a split second, he relaxed only to curse himself as he overextended a leap, causing him to land at the base of a nearby tree. His ability to sense chakra. Another thing his body had learned thanks to his adoptive sister was that Mizuki was not far behind me. Swiftly he tucked himself behind a tree, trying to hide his body entirely. Shivering in fear that he might be caught and worse yet killed, he froze immediately, his breath halting in his throat as he closed his eyes. Iruka smiled as he leapt up beside Naruto through the trees. His body still ragged with wounds given to him by the treacherous Mizuki. He turned holding his hand out. Naruto, give me the scroll. I can move faster than you to the Hokage with it, and it will keep Mizuki from getting it. He stated warmly. Naruto nodded as he turned around, however he leapt, pushing all his weight forward while bringing up his knee, crashing it into the chin of Iruka. The said teacher crashed backwards onto the path between the trees below before standing up, his visage dissipating into smoke, revealing a rather surprised Mizuki. How did you know it was me? He growled. Because I'm Iruka, Naruto replied as he dropped his own disguise, revealing the scarred Chunin instructor. You will have to go through me to get to Naruto. Che. Looks like I will, however I don't understand why you would protect that beast. He is no different from me. He's going to use that scroll to gain power and exact his revenge on the village. That's what we beasts would do. Mizuki hissed. That's true, that beasts would do that. Iruka stated. Behind the tree Naruto's eyes flashed open, his emotions running rampant as he peeked out from behind the tree, seeing the one person who had cried for him, who had apologized, now calling him a beast. His heart feeling as if it were tearing itself apart. However, Naruto isn't a beast, he's a ninja of the hidden leaf. With those words alone, the once wound that had started to stir in his heart immediately sewn itself together, his admiration for his teacher, and seemingly brother growing with no ends. And that is why I will stop you no matter what. You are a damned fool, Iruka. Those words will be your last. With that he began to reach back and lift his last giant shuriken from its strap. Don't you dare lay a hand on Iruka-sensei, you bastard. Naruto yelled out as he stepped from behind the tree into clear view. The scroll set upon the ground beside him as he held a hand on it. With a flip of his hand he tossed it to Iruka with a smile, not a fake one, before turning his head towards Mizuki. A wave of determination rolling off him like the morning mist in the eastern peaks. His aquamarine eyes glistening with deadly intent, showing just how far he would go to keep his precious few safe. Oh, so the little academy demon wants to fight. This will make killing you so much more fun, then I'm going to enjoy tearing your beloved sensei apart. He stated with glee at the prospect of killing, his mind entering the insanity which all ninja have when they go into a fight. Do your worst, cuz I will return it to you 1,000 times, asshole. With that he forms the cross-shaped seal, smirking. Shadow clone jutsu. The loud heralding explosion of smoke and noise billowed throughout the whole area around them. As the smoke cleared, the eyes of both Iruka, who held the scroll tightly in his grasp, guarding it, as well as Mizuki, nearly popped out of their head with how wide their eyelids were. Before them was a mass of orange, blue, and yellow ninjas. Perfect replications of Naruto, each one smirking before them. If one were to take a head count, it would easily be well over 100 physical clones. What all that talk and you're not going to do anything? Fine then this demon will begin. All the Narutos chimed before swarming towards the flabbergasted traitor. The resounding clash of flesh and bone echoed throughout the forest as knuckles, fingers, forearms, elbows, skulls, knees, shins, feet, and palms crashed upon the Chunin. If anything were louder, it would be the screams and whines of pain from the one person who was taking the damage as he deserved. After 15 minutes, the echo of popping and wafts of smoke could be both seen and heard throughout the area as the clones were released. Ahehe. I think I went a bit far, Iruka-sensei. Naruto stammered out with a fox grin. Iruka just sat there awestruck at the student who couldn't form a single cohesive illusionary intangible clone, could form hundreds of physical, breathing living clones of that magnitude and not fall prey to chakra exhaustion. Naruto, come here for a second. Iruka ordered, his voice calm, yet prideful. A smile being worn proudly on his scarred face despite the pain he was in. Naruto complied with a single nod before sitting in front of Iruka. Close your eyes, I have a surprise for you. As his eyelids closed, he stretched his physical sense out, wondering what was going on. He felt his goggles, the trademark part of being a shinobi in training, being removed. However, what he felt next was rather different. On his forehead, And he could feel something stiff, though being held in place with a soft fabric that breathed. You can open your eyes now. The first thing Naruto did when his gaze focused was see the goggles in his mentor's hands. His vision traced upwards to the empty spot on Iruka's face before gasping. Tentatively he reached up, feeling the shinobi forehead protector, a symbol of being an adult in the shinobi world, on his forehead. Congratulations Naruto, you pass. What Iruka should have expected but didn't was a huge hug from his student, friend, and pseudo-brother. The hug was welcomed despite the pain of having an open wound on his back, shoulders, and thigh, but he didn't care. He couldn't have been any prouder that moment, as not only did his own life be saved by his precious person, but also the village. Sarutobi sat at his desk, gazing warmly at the crystalline sphere before him. His eyes crinkling in pride and happiness as he witnessed what truly transpired. Immediately he cleared his throat before speaking seemingly to himself. Call back all the Chunin, Junin, and Anbu who went after Naruto. He ordered. Within a few minutes, those that had gone out in search for the scroll, as well as blood from the demon, as they call him, reappeared before the elderly ninja. After a few more minutes Naruto showed up with Iruka and the scroll on his back. Well, it would seem that we have a new genin. Yep, so you better watch out old man, cause I'm gonna take your job from you someday. Oh, and that bastard Mizuki is over there. I kinda had to beat some sense into him when he tried to kill Iruka-sensei and attacked me. Naruto stated before handing the scroll back. Sorry about taking the scroll, I got tricked by that bastard. The blonde replied with a bow of his head. He led Iruka down to the waiting arms of the medics on site, who immediately tended his wounds. I know Naruto, I wouldn't be a Hokage if I didn't. As for Mizuki, take him to Anko. Seeing as Ibiki is out on a mission, I want to know exactly why he wanted the scroll and where he was going to go. Sarutobi stated to the Anbu on his right. You should probably get to bed Naruto. Tomorrow you find out your new teacher, and who is on your team, then get your ninja picture taken. Besides, I'm sure Mika Kitsu is worried about you. Naruto nodded before patting his stomach, making it appear like he was wiping his hands off. The old man smiled before ruffling the blonde's hair before stepping back into the tower. Naruto on the other hand rushed home as happy as he could be. When he unlocked and opened his door he gasped at the sight before him. Jiraiya smirked warmly as he entered the office of his sensei. He couldn't understand why the normal contingent of Anbu weren't there, but shrugged it off as them being sent on menial task for annoying the old man. His white hair snapping at his back as he looked over his sensei's shoulder before chuckling. Sarutobi smiled on the other hand, feeling a very familiar presence. So, I take it you found out what you were ordered to? Sarutobi asked. Somewhat, though that can wait till later. I wonder what Naruto is doing with that scroll. The old pervert commented. Quite simple, he stole it. On the other hand, he did so not to use against us, but perhaps to help us. Granted, all the jutsu in there are forbidden, but then again those jutsu belong to him either way. True, but I would think he would be better off waiting till he's 16 to get the rest of those jutsu. In any case, I came back to see if he graduated to genin or not. Unfortunately he didn't. A feminine voice spoke up. Well, hello there Florida. Jiraiya stated towards Tsunade before he found himself pulling his face out of the mahogany wood floor. The overly busty, genjutsu disguised blonde smirked as she gazed at the crystalline orb. He couldn't perform simple clone from what I heard. Apparently that technique won't ever be done by him, he has too much chakra. Even worse is the fact that his control dropped heavily. I wonder why? Tsunade stated as she held out his academy record. That would be due to Kitsu. She's been steadily increasing his chakra reserves. Case in point why he can do the shadow clone jutsu. That technique became forbidden due to the stress it can cause from simply using it. 1. It severely cuts the chakra of the user down. 2. When the clone is dispersed or released, the knowledge comes back, making it an effective scout or diversion jutsu. But the knowledge one gains from it can cause mental fatigue, which was often the case in damaging most of those who use it. Sarutobi stated. Ooh, this is gonna be interesting. I didn't think he could produce that many. The old leader stated as he witnessed Naruto performing the massive amount of clones before pummeling Mizuki. Naruto took the scroll simply because he wanted to become a genin. His failure caused him to trust the wrong person, although with that brat's luck he found a traitor in our midst and we would not have known it. Well, I'm going to go to his apartment. I can bet that he will be a genin after this is done with. After all, it is a supplementary rule that if an academy student does bring in a traitor or save the life of a chunin, that he is promoted to genin if he isn't already one. Jiraiya stated before turning around. Oh, and he needs to receive his cut from the books he's been writing, hehe. Too bad he won't go into the adult books, he would surpass me if he did. He will not if I have any say about it. Tsunade stated before thwacking Jiraiya again on his head before dragging him out of the office. I'm only here to congratulate the brat, after that I'm going out again. She replied. It didn't take long for the two of the three legendary Sannin to reach their destination, especially by rooftop. Using their unique skills as shinobi, they dispersed the traps that layered the doors and windows before entering. Smiling, they sat down at the kitchen table, as the fox they had grown to appreciate like a family member padded up to them begging for attention. As they were petting it, they heard the familiar tone of keys jingling along with the door lock being unlocked. The two older Sannin just smiled warmly as they bore witness to a messy mop of unruly golden blonde hair peek over the kitchen counter. They knew it defied gravity, but it did so more when combined with a forehead protector with black wrapping instead of the standard blue that Genin wore. Naruto gasped as he turned to face them. A look of shock as well as surprise etched deeply upon his whiskered face. Obaa-chan. Ero Sennin, he yelled before tackling them both to the kitchen floor, hugging them warmly. Tsunade would have normally just grown angry at Naruto for doing that, however she remembered that nickname he used was a way of showing how much he cared for them. She sighed before hugging him back while Jiraiya muttered along the lines of kids having no respect for their elders. She was even more surprised at how tight his grip had become and found herself almost having her lungs crushed under the hug. Of course it wouldn't happen given that she could reinforce her bone structure with chakra, but still it caught her off guard. She smiled as she flicked his headband, causing it to fly off before kissing his forehead. You know I detest that name you have given me, Naruto-chan. She stated. She rarely called him Chan except when she felt like teasing him in the roundabout way that he teased her. I see you graduated. Congratulations, she stated warmly. Yeah, even though I failed the exam, I kinda snuck the forbidden jutsu scroll and learned a really cool technique that will help me learn things faster. It's called Shadow Clone Jutsu. My clones can learn things, and when released or attacked, the knowledge they gain comes back to me. It's really cool. What's even more cool about it is that I can make a whole load of them, huh brat? A little monkey told me that you also caught a traitor in the village, and beat the ever-living crap out of him. Jiraiya stated. Kid, I know I've said it before, but you are really something, hehe, even though you're still a short scrawny brat. The white-haired pervert stated to both increase Naruto's ego then immediately squash it down. You're just saying that cause you're jealous that I got to hug Tsunade Obaa-chan. You can't even get within a foot of her without getting thrashed, Ero Sennin. You must really be weak or something. Naruto stated with a smirk. Tsunade couldn't help but chuckle for a moment as her eyebrows arched. Jiraiya grumbled before grabbing a hold of Naruto and began to smack him repeatedly atop the boy's head. Naruto grumbled after each hit before smirking. Tsunade noticed this before grinning widely. Harem jutsu. Tsunade balked at what happened. Instead of one, Naruko, a blonde pigtailed woman with little modesty, there were 20 swarming around Jiraiya, giggling and moaning in a seductive tone. Jiraiya, the self-proclaimed super pervert, stood a snowball's chance in a volcano, which is to say before he was sent careening to a nearby wall via blood rockets from his nose. Needless to say, he was unconscious and twitching. Tsunade fell to the ground laughing at the newest anti-pervert jutsu. It was true that she enjoyed making anti-pervert jutsus that would keep men at bay, but her adoptive brother, son, proved to be quite the type that would carry on the tradition. Naruto smirked as he used Jiraiya as a mop, cleaning up the spilled blood. That'll teach Ero Sennin to beat on my head like that. So you like my new anti-pervert jutsu? Hell yeah brat. I take it as a combination of shadow clone and a henge. Very creative, by the way, here you go. She stated, tossing him an envelope. He blinked for a moment before opening it. His jaw immediately found itself resting on the floor as he stared at the amount of money within that envelope. From your first set of books titled Adventures of a Fox Ninja. I even liked your rendition of me in that. Tsunade commented before pulling out a copy. Apparently it's very popular with many kids, teenagers, and adults. It should be, it's 3 different versions. The prankster edition for kids, the action and adventure for teenagers, and romance with action and adventures for adults. Best of all, no hentai. Naruto cheered. He took the envelope and smiled before walking towards his room. Swiftly he undid a floorboard underneath his bed before stuffing the envelope into a fire and waterproof tin. Smiling, he replaced the board before coming back out with an ink brush. Taking the book from Tsunade, he smiled before autographing it for her. She smiled warmly before sliding it back into her satchel. "So how long you going to be the village this time?" Naruto asked. "Probably till tomorrow evening. I have to update the poisons registry at the hospital tomorrow morning. After that I will be at the gambling house. Ooh, then a soak in the hot springs, hehe." Tsunade stated with a small smirk. She then chuckled before tossing Jiraiya's still unconscious form over her shoulder. "Well, you should get to bed, kid. Only 7 more hours till dawn and you need a decent and respectable picture for your ninja record. By the way, how are you doing holding up your disguise? Only 3 people have seen me without it. Hinata-chan, Old Man Hokage, and Iruka-sensei, though he kinda figured it out earlier. I ranked higher in taijutsu than the rest of the class, hehe. Sure made that Sasuke bastard surprised, hehe." Naruto shone a wide true fox grin. Tsunade smiled before nodding. With that she waved as she left. Naruto picked up Maki before walking to his room. Carefully he undid his forehead protector before hanging it on the post of his bed. Smiling warmly, he crawled into bed after changing into a sleeveless shirt and boxers before sleeping. All the while his fox sister and tenant rested upon his chest. Inside the seal, Kitsu, otherwise known as Kyuubi to mortals, smiled warmly at her tenant and pseudo-brother. She was rather happy that he managed to get up one rung of the proverbial ladder. She also knows that from here on out things would be more difficult, as it was well known in the shinobi profession that death was commonplace for both ally and enemy. She smiled happily, however, as her 9 tails slowly weaved around her, forming a circle, allowing her to watch the dreamscape that was Naruto. Naruto smirked, sitting in front of the Hokage, a copy of his ninja accomplishments laid bare before him in a yellow folder. As an academy student, he was awarded a C-class mission completion for bringing about the capture of a traitor. Another C-class congratulatory rank for returning a prized artifact of the village, the Forbidden Scroll of Jutsu, as well as a B-grade class for successfully infiltrating the Hokage Tower to take the same said scroll. However, the details on that were kept secret and only known to the Hokage. Even more so to keep it hidden from other villages. However, the Hokage was not smirking, well, not outwardly. In his hands was a single photograph taken for the updated record. Apparently Naruto had put on red and white makeup as well as had it look ridiculous. Inwardly the Hokage was laughing as if it were going out of style. "Well, I figured that I should do something creative, kinda like art, so I chose myself as both the subject and the medium, hehe." Naruto cackled out. He was rather pleased with his artistic rendition. "Take it again. This photo is embarrassing for a ninja, even more so it will make your past accomplishments look like you aren't to be taken seriously," Sarutobi stated. It was rather true, however it was somewhat known that the only ones who were allowed to wear makeup were kunoichi, or those who use puppets. The idea was to draw attention to the puppeteer, not the puppet, which in many cases proved fatal for those whose attentions were not on the weapons. "What? Come on, old man. It took me 4 hours to get the paint just right," Naruto grumbled out. "Take it again, as I said. I will not have you put on a team." "Let's see how you handle this then, old man." "Why jutsu?" Naruto yelled out, causing a puff of smoke to cover him. When it began to disperse, there stood Naruto, the vixen. Sarutobi blinked for a moment before falling back. Granted, he was not as affected as the younger male ninja. He was a closet pervert nonetheless, so in effect he did get a bloody nose. "Please, Hokage-sama, accept the photo for me," Naruto said with a sweet and gentle voice before it was released, causing him to revert to his normal albeit loud self. "Why jutsu, huh? Very tricky, don't use that again," Sarutobi stated as he wiped his nose. In his peripheral vision he caught note of a glint before the door was slid open. A brown-haired boy ran in with a long scarf. In his hand was a 5-bladed shuriken, though judging from the grip on it, the boy was clearly an amateur. "Not again, that's the 3rd time today," the elderly man exasperatedly stated in his mind. "Prepare yourself, I will be Hokage, old man." The kid yelled before part of his scarf got caught on the doorstop, causing his legs to keep going, but in effect clotheslined him. Ouch! He yelled out before getting up. His shuriken lost, as in his fall he had flinged it upwards. He looked around before growling. Pointing a finger at Naruto, he growled out, "You, how dare you trip me? You idiot, you tripped on your own 2 feet, don't lie when it can be caught, you dumbass. You dare talk to me like that, you midget, loud-mouthed idiot," the kid yelled out. He swiftly found himself struggling in Naruto's grip as the blonde held the kid up eye level. His right arm clasped tightly around the front of the kid's collar. He raised his fist, preparing to smack the kid downwards for his insults and lies. "Put down the Honorable Hokage's grandson, you whelp," an entirely black-clad ninja stated as he adjusted his pitch-black sunglasses. "See, you aren't going to hit me, I'm the grandson of the Hokage," he stated before he found himself huddled on the floor, clutching the top of his head in pain where a large lump had found itself. "I don't care if you're the granddaughter of the old man. I'm going to go retake my photo now, but I'm not going to like it, old man," Naruto said, jutting his chin towards the Hokage. With that, Naruto walked out of the office, leaving the 2 interrupters of his meeting alone. "Hokage-sama, why do you allow that thing to come into your office? He's nothing but rubbish," the ninja stated as he walked up to his superior. "That, rubbish, as you call him, is Uzumaki Naruto, and he's a good kid. He will make a powerful ninja if he ever learns to restrain himself," Sarutobi stated. "Besides, you lost again," he stated, pointing towards the empty spot where his grandson was. "You might want to go chase Konohamaru down again, Ebisu." Ebisu nodded swiftly before disappearing out the door, his mind now worrying about his young charge. Sarutobi just smirked as he pulled out his gazing ball. He chuckled as he saw who Konohamaru was with. "Hey boss, are you okay?" Konohamaru asked. It seemed that everywhere they went to gather intelligence on the female body, just to perfect the Waijutsu for him, Naruto was beaten within an inch of his life. The first time was when Naruto told him to mimic and transform into a passing woman. What he ended up transforming into was perhaps the opposite of beauty in men's eyes. When asked, Naruto said it looked a little like the woman. What his boss, the first person to call him by his first name instead of honorable grandson or honorable little master, ended up with was a nasty beat down, while the woman just stated to not associate with Naruto. "Yeah, I kinda got used to it the first time it happened, hee. Anyways, we had live models for you, so you get the idea. We also saw pictures in the bookstore, and then of course the hot springs." Naruto shuddered inwardly. It was there that he got the harshest beating of his life, and from someone he knew. Tsunade apparently thought he was Jiraiya, and well, it took Konohamaru an hour before Naruto regained consciousness. "So all we need to do now is simply practice what you learned and apply it. Now begin," the blonde-haired container stated, his bruises fading as time passed. He knew that Konohamaru was trying, but still it kept getting on his nerves. With each transformation, he yelled at him to adjust the proper areas, and after a few hours it was finally mastered. "Good job, Konohamaru. Thanks, boss. Now I can take out that pervert sensei of mine, take out the old man and become Hokage. Don't forget about me. My dream is to be the best Hokage there ever was, and I'm not going to lose." Naruto chided in ruffling the kid's hair that fell from his skullcap. "There you are, honorable grandson. It is time for us to go and get back to your training. Only under me will you achieve greatness and become Hokage. Go away, you perv," the kid yelled back. "If you spend all your time with him, you will never obtain your dream. I am the best shortcut you have to being Hokage," Ebisu stated, his distaste with the Kyuubi container lacing his words. Naruto's eyebrow twitched in anger as he saw yet another person trying to keep his new friend away from him. Konohamaru noticed the anger in Naruto before smirking. "I said go away, and since you didn't listen, then I have no choice." "Why jutsu?" Konohamaru yelled before he took on the form of a perfect, proportional and lovely auburn-haired woman, the wisps of smoke barely covering her more intimate parts. Ebisu's jaw dropped as blood began to drip from his nose. However, he did not lose consciousness nor go away. "Such lewd and improper things will never work on me, young master. Now let's go," he stated before reaching out to take his charge home by force. "I should have known that hanging out with a ruffian would do this. Hey, you hiding pervert, why don't you just go? Konohamaru doesn't want you around, and I already feel like kicking your ass." Naruto stated as he stepped in between the supposed gentleman and his friend. You can try, you little ruffian, however I am a special Junin and I know your skills. You have no chance in defeating one of my caliber. He retorted back to Naruto. I bet I can beat you with just this move, harem jutsu. With the set of seals for shadow clone jutsu, he smirked as dozens of his clones formed from puffs and pops of smoke. The Junin just smirked before rushing forward before the smoke exploded again around his clones. When the smoke cleared, dozens of nude Narukos grabbed a hold of him, rubbing against him, uttering erotic moans. Entirely unprepared for such a maneuver, he found himself launched into orbit by twin fountains of blood. Unconscious along the whole way. Hey, what a pervert. Wow boss, that was so cool. The kid yelled at the top of his lungs, surprised by Naruto's ability to do what he couldn't. Konohamaru, what that pervert said is untrue. There is no shortcut or easy path to become a Hokage. It takes years of training, studying, and willpower. If you became Hokage just because of that, people wouldn't respect you at all, because if that's all it took, I would have become a Hokage a long time ago. I'm strong as I am right now because I trained since I was 3. However, if you want to become Hokage, you gotta beat me first. Naruto stated as he waved. Konohamaru smiled before following. From here on, Naruto ni-chan, we're rivals. I promise you I will do my best and I will beat you. Well, I guess I better go train then, huh? As the next day came, Naruto smiled. He looked at himself in the mirror as he adjusted his forehead protector. Then taking a cloth and polishing it just a little bit more to make it gleam with a shine. Taking his kunai pouch, he strapped it to his leg, put on his razor knuckle gloves, and lastly his shuriken pouch. He even smiled even warmer as he picked up his sister Fox before taking a miniature forehead protector around her neck, almost like a collar. Today was his day, the day he got put on a team, and today was the day that he would become an even stronger ninja, as well as get a date from a beautiful woman he liked in class. It was well known to the whole class that he had a crush on a pink-haired kunoichi named Sakura Haruno. Ever since he heard about the guys talk about girls in a positive form, as in boyfriend and girlfriend, he even overheard them talk about her. It was then that he decided to prove himself to his fellow classmates and ninja that he would date Sakura. Though of course she was always trying to get the attention of a certain bastard. Hell, all the girls were. Sasuke was the coolest and, in the girls' opinion, the best-looking ninja in the class. It made him sick every time they swooned over him, and what's worse is that he ignored them all. If I ever had a girl liking me, I wouldn't do what he does to them. He retorted in his mind. He then smiled and walked towards the academy. He had a light bounce in his step with his fox bouncing happily on his shoulder. He remembered how after he turned in the new photo, one that had him and his sister Fox, he had to beg to allow the Hokage to allow Naruto to bring her along. He didn't like how the old man stated that if she did so, she would be considered one of his tools. Of course Naruto knew that some ninja use animals as tools, but he wouldn't use his sister like that. He wanted her with him because she was his companion, his friend, and his confidant. He caught quite a few glares shoved towards him and his sister, but he blew them off. He knew why they did and he didn't care because they didn't know him. They even tried to throw a few stones at his fox, but being a ninja, he was rather quick to bat them away from his sister. He didn't ever want a repeat of what happened 4.5 years ago to happen again. Upon entering the class, he found himself smiling a wide fox grin. Hey moron, what are you doing here? Only those who passed get to be here, and what's up with the stuffed animal? Shikamaru stated, looking bored as usual. Naruto flicked his thumb towards his forehead protector. I should have foreseen that someone lazy like you wouldn't pay attention to your surroundings. I have more forehead protector because I passed you, dumbass. And Mika ni-chan isn't a stuffed animal. She's a real fox. Isn't that right, Mika ni-chan? He retorted as his fox lifted her head up and smiled warmly in her own vixen way. Shikamaru just shrugged and muttered his usual, troublesome, before going back to his desk near the window. Naruto just smiled as he went and sat beside his only friend his own age. He remembered her when they were little, both enjoying each other's company for a week. Even though during his 6-year abscesses she drastically changed, but he never did forget about her. Hinata Hyuga was her name. She was once an outgoing, laughing, and fun-loving girl, though now she was shy, quiet, and weird to Naruto. Every time he got close she seemed to turn red, and if he touched her or got too close she would pass out. That is what he found weird. He only marked it as she's probably got a cold, or is really tired from the training she received. Hinata on the other hand, blushed and fainted in proximity of Naruto. Because of the lack of feelings in her home, the harshness of her father's and clan's training as well as the daily berating on how weak she was, it was no wonder she didn't curl up into a ball. She honestly loved Naruto with all her heart. She was his friend first, then as he wrote her, she started thinking more about Naruto until it turned into a crush. Then when he returned after a long absence she was so happy that he was back and still the same in many aspects yet stronger. She saw his strength before, his determination, and his dream. She wanted to have the same resolve, the same courage and strength so she wouldn't cry. Eventually those feelings turned into full-blown love for the blonde idiot. She knew Naruto was naive, but she liked that in him. What she loved even more about him was that every time he was around her, he would try to cheer her up and make her happy. "Hey Hinata," he stated with a wave. He kept his distance knowing that if he got too close she would faint and he did want to have a conversation with her, even though they were usually small. Hi N. Naruto-kun. She returned, surprised he was talking to her first. Normally he would ask Sakura on a date but today he was talking to her first. She blushed a heavy set of crimson before looking down fidgeting with her fingers. "See. Congratulations on page. Passing," she nearly whispered. Naruto strained to hear her but he did and closed his eyes with a very deep smile. He leaned over and hugged her reflexively, in which she could only open her eyes wider before they rolled back into her head. With that she passed out with a rather large smile on her face. Naruto sighed before leaning her forward onto her desk, ensuring she wouldn't fall to the floor or hurt herself. He inwardly smacked himself for doing that yet again. Every time he kept wondering why it was she passed out around him yet he himself couldn't figure it out. It made no real sense to him so he just marked it as weird. He hoped that one day she would explain to him why she keeps fainting around him or turning red. His thoughts were interrupted when the doorway slammed open. He smiled at the person of his affections was quickly seen. Her pink hair flowing like water. He then blinked before seeing his love interest's rival, the third loudest person in the class, he being the first, Kiba Inuzuka being the second, pushed against Sakura fighting to claim a seat beside their own crushes. Once again he began to despise Sasuke for having all the luck of having girls swoon over him. Ino Yamanaka was her name and her mother owned a rather large flower shop in the commercial district. "Out of the way billboard brow. Sasuke-kun is mine," Ino screeched. Behind them of course was the rest of the Sasuke fan club or as most of the guys called them the Harpies from Hell. Ino was a platinum blonde. She had her hair in a long ponytail, with a large strand flowing off the right of her face. She once again wore a purple dress with the slit up the sides. The slits went so far up the sides, that an inch of fabric covered her waist. She was rather thin, due to the fact she was always on a so-called diet. Her midriff was bandaged, as were her thighs to show some modesty even though the dress looked like something more based on something a prostitute would wear. Naruto knew that kunoichi who were not married by the age of age went into courtesan training, often taking rather risky missions that involved using their body to seduce the target to gain information or assassinate. He grumbled inwardly hoping that neither Hinata nor Sakura would do such. He didn't want Hinata doing that because she was his first friend. Sakura on the other hand he wanted to remain pure till she married him hopefully. "Yeah right Ino pig. Sasuke-kun never said he was yours, which means he's mine." Sakura screeched right beside her. Eventually the frame of the door gave away a little bit and they both stumbled in but swiftly recovered before fighting their way to take the only open seat beside Sasuke. Naruto couldn't help but hope that he would be placed on a team with Hinata and Sakura, then show Sasuke up. He remembered that he had to hold back a lot of times when it came to a lot of things he knew. That and the fact that classes were so boring that he would fall asleep through the tests, and flunk. After all he knew that if he were seen as someone smart, talented, and dangerous as a shinobi, those attempts on his life would become drastically harder, as well as people would fear him. He never wanted people to fear him, he just wanted acceptance. He sighed before standing up and walking past the raging kunoichi before stepping onto Sasuke's desk glaring at him. He was jealous of Sasuke who had acknowledgement, respect, and was given everything while Naruto worked hard. The kunoichi stopped rumbling as they all yelled at Naruto to get away from their precious Uchiha. This just made Naruto glare even more. What he didn't account for was when one of the male genin behind him stood up to back away from the kunoichi, who were giving off a fair bit of killing intent towards Naruto, and inadvertently knocked him forward. The whole class, which was loud, was now deathly silent. The guys were more silent, feeling a wave of rage fall over all of the ladies there, save Hinata, who woke up. The kunoichi themselves were pissed. There Naruto was, with his lips on Sasuke. Naruto had inadvertently stolen Sasuke's first kiss. As the boys broke it off, gagging and trying to throw up, the ladies themselves swiftly grabbed a hold of Naruto before ushering the worst beating he ever received, while Hinata could only gasp. The total beating was broken up when the door once again opened, revealing their Chunin sensei, Iruka Amino. "Alright class, settle down, get to your seats, and for God's sake someone put Naruto into an empty desk," he grumbled. He could only sigh, wondering why Naruto was being demolished by the girls and why the boy wouldn't at least dodge the incoming strikes. After having his bottom handed to him yesterday by the same student, he had swiftly gauged Naruto's ability with his special style of taijutsu. "Today you are no longer academy students, but now genin. Things only get tougher from here on out, and as such I wish you all the best of luck. I will now assign you all to teams," he stated before swiftly calling out the names of the teams as well as instructors. He knew of the secondary exam that followed, as well knew that a good portion of the class would fail. He strived to give them heads up about teamwork and such, but the students each had their own ideas. Team 7. Naruto Uzumaki, Sakura Haruno. He immediately was interrupted by Naruto jumping for joy. And Sasuke Uchiha. Naruto's jump for joy was cut off while Sakura cheered. "Oi Iruka-sensei, why do I have to be on a team with that frozen bastard, huh?" Naruto yelled out. "Why can't I have Sakura and Hinata on my team?" "Because you are in last place of the class. It is customary as well as tradition to put the worst student with the best. Sasuke was the best overall, while you were the worst," Iruka stated. He sent Naruto an apologetic look, knowing that Naruto was fuming mad. Team 7. Your Junin instructor is Kakashi Hitaki. Team 8. Kiba Inuzuka, Hinata Hyuga, and Shino Aburame. Your instructor is Kurane Yuhi. He read off. He noticed that Hinata was glowing red from a blush. He knew the girl liked Naruto, but also knew that Naruto liked Sakura. He wondered if his pseudo-son, brother, would ever think of Hinata as more than a friend, since the girl obviously cared a great deal about Naruto. He however didn't figure it out, even when most of the population who had seen them together had. Sighing, he waited till things were all said and done before turning back to them, allowing them to enjoy a lunch before meeting their Junin sensei. With that he walked out of the room, through the hallways and eventually all the way to the Hokage's tower. Kakashi Hitaki was a rather unique Junin. He was a known genius, as much was all of the Hitaki clan. He was legendary and wanted quite often outside Fire Country for a multitude of reasons. During the Rock and Leaf War, his talent shined quite well during the war despite the mental anguish life had cruelly dealt to him. His best friend and rival died, saving his own life during a rescue operation, even going so far as to give him one of his eyes, a recently fully activated Sharingan. After the said war, he served as an Anbu hunter nin, hoping to fill the void of losing a team member by hunting down various missing nin. This had earned him the reputation Copycat Kakashi, as he often used the Sharingan to copy a multitude of jutsu from his targets before killing them. After quite a few successful hunts ranging in the hundreds, he was promoted to Anbu captain. It was during which he felt another pain of loss. Rin, a medic nin on his team, disappeared. She was the only family he had left aside from his sensei, who was now a Hokage. Born from the Inuzuka tribe, Rin was a rather calm and collected woman. She loved animals, but she felt her calling was to heal the wounded. Even in battle she was no slouch either, as most medic nin tend to be. When she disappeared, Kakashi took it to heart, the hard way. He felt abandoned by the one woman he truly loved, though never tried to show it. After a few bottles of sake, and talking with his sensei as well as Jiraiya, the legendary Toad Sennin, he had discovered the literary works of adults. Since then not a single Icha paradise has left his side, even as he now was inspecting the homes of his potential genin team. Taking account of all things that happened in his life, he kept with his best friend a promise. To only train a team who truly worked together. It was such that he had retired from being an Anbu captain to a Junin instructor, and even then that he had flunked all his previous genin teams before him. Now he found himself sighing from the windowsill looking over the bedraggled apartment of one Uzumaki Naruto. Swiftly and deftly picking the lock on the window as well as disarming the added traps, he leapt inside before putting a basket of fruit on the table with a note that simply stated, "More fruit, less ramen." He then turned to the fridge and shuddered as month-old expired milk cartons were laying in a heap, their contents congealing as they had a habit of trying to escape. He couldn't help but agree that a mask had several good purposes, especially when being exposed to potentially biohazardous materials. Grabbing a trash bag, he swiftly threw away all the rotten milk, then lastly hurling the offending bag filled with dangerous noxious fumes out the window. Swiftly going through a set of seals, he exhaled a steady stream of fire, effectively incinerating the contents and the bag to nothing but a fine dust which was swept away in the wind. Out of all three, he couldn't help but feel that Naruto was cheated, yet he knew why exactly. He knew he had a chance to take the boy, and raise him properly, but his own wounds never healed and he felt even after the fourth's death that he would never grow too attached to anyone. With that he re-engaged the traps as he left via the window again. He smiled as the sun was near its setting phase with a happy gleam on his masked face. The only way you could tell was simply the way his visible eye curled downwards as his cheek rose. Swiftly walking towards the classroom, he couldn't help but wonder if the last Uchiha survivor, the first female Haruno to ever be a ninja, and the Kyuubi container would do well together. Immediately upon opening the door, his senses were sent careening as chalk dust from a fallen eraser, which landed atop his silver mane of hair, assaulted his only open eye. "My first impression of you all, I hate you. Meeting on the roof, 3 minutes," he stated, even though he was laughing inwardly. As he body flickered to the roof, he simply stood against one of the air conditioning units waiting for his team. 2.5 minutes later they arrived, causing him to smile again. "Well, to find out each other and ourselves we are going to go through an introduction. Tell everyone your name, likes, dislikes, and dreams for the future," he stated as he pulled out a book with the censorship sign upon it. Sensei, shouldn't you go first so we can understand what you mean?" Sakura asked. They were rather confused about him. He fell so easily for Naruto's prank, yet they all could feel a sense of power with him. "My name is Hitaki Kakashi. I have a few likes, a few dislikes. As for my dream, I'm not telling," he stated, though inwardly he was already answering for himself. "You're up, Pinky," he stated. He could visibly see the twang of anger on her face and he enjoyed it. If anything, if they didn't pass, then the next 2 days would be entertaining for him at least. "My name is not Pinky, it's Haruno Sakura. I hate Naruto and perverts. I dream of marrying." With every pause she giggled as she looked over at the brooding Uchiha. Naruto noticed this and grumbled even more. Kakashi on the other hand just shook his head with a single thought, fangirl. He felt sorry for Sasuke at that point. "Whiskers, you're up. Name is Uzumaki Naruto, remember it. I like ramen, Mika-ni-chan, Hinata, Sakura-chan, and someone else. I dislike broody pretty boys who get everything they want because of their name and the 3-minute wait it takes to cook ramen. My dream is to be the best Hokage ever so that everyone will stop disrespecting and acknowledge me for who I am, not who I keep inside," he stated. The last part was merely a whisper caught on the wind. Luckily it was heard only by the fox resting in his lap, and his Junin instructor. "Oh, and this little vixen here is Uzumaki Mika. Yeah, this is the first time I'm talking. No, you're not imagining it. Yes, I am a fox. And no, the only person who gets to pet me is Hinata-ni-chan and Naru-ni-san. I like sleeping, playing, and my brother. I dislike dogs, and people who hurt foxes. My dream is to see Naru-ni-san be Hokage and to protect the village, proving that we foxes aren't evil, just misunderstood," the fox stated, taking everyone there by surprise. "What? Okay. I'm going to have to talk to you two after this, Naruto and Mika." "Sunshine, you're up," Kakashi stated. He was visibly trying to pull his chin out from under his shirt. He knew then that if the fox talked it was no normal fox. He knew that there was something up, but the Hokage merely stated he would find out on his own. "My name is Uchiha Sasuke. I have few likes, a lot of dislikes. My dream, no, my ambition is to restore the Uchiha clan and to kill a certain person," the raven-haired Avenger stated. Kakashi nodded before going over what he had. A loudmouth demon container with a demon fox for a sister, a fangirl who is more into looks and dating than into being a shinobi, and a repressed sociopathic avenger. Now that that's over with, Sakura and Sasuke, you guys can go home. However, don't eat breakfast and be at training grounds number 7 at 8 o'clock in the morning. We are going to have a survival exercise. But sensei, we already did those in the academy. Then you're going to love this. The survival exercise is the true genin test. What you guys just took was to see if you are able to be genin. This test has a 66% chance of failure. So don't eat breakfast or you're going to throw up, he stated before watching them leave. Naruto, it's been a while, Kakashi stated before pulling out his old Anbu mask. Naruto blinked for a moment before running up and tackling the ex-Anbu. I see you recognize me, even though you're still shorter than the rest of your classmates. Oi Kakashi sensei, that's not fair, I'm still a kid, Naruto stated. So you want to know, huh? Not here though, a raven and a mockingbird are too close, Naruto whispered. Kakashi nodded, glad that he didn't slack off on sensing presences. He nodded before grabbing Naruto and the fox before disappearing in the swirl of leaves. Behind them, Sasuke and Sakura just grumbled before going their own separate directions. Kakashi smiled, appearing with his passengers atop the Hokage monument. How did you know this was my favorite place to come to talk? I just know. Anyways, Mika, you can unfurl your tails. I know you're also sharing with Kyuubi. Kakashi deadpanned. Hehe. I guess we gotta work on your genjutsu then, Kitsu ni-chan and Mika ni-chan. Naruto stammered out as he scratched the back of his head nervously. Anyways, I guess you would consider her half demon, but please don't let it be known, Kakashi-sensei. She's my sister, both of them are, he pleaded. Kakashi just chuckled before ruffling the top of the kid's head. Don't worry, Naruto. I won't tell. Besides, the only ones who know of it are us Junin instructors, the Hokage, and the Anbu. It took a while, but we did manage to weed out the morons who don't see you for you. In any case, I want you to be careful. Ibiki and Anko send their regards, by the way, Kakashi stated as he read his little erotic book. Hehe, I was wondering why I haven't seen them. Well, is there anything else? Well, since you introduced your sisters, they are a part of the team, so they have the same training as everyone else. Other than that, just do your best. See ya. With that, Kakashi disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Naruto nodded before walking with his sisters to the gates. He promised his two other senseis, the two of the 3 legendary Sennin, that he would see them off, and to him, he always made sure to keep his word or die trying. Maki and Naruto's stomachs grumbled as they made their way towards the training area 7 as was instructed. They wanted to be there early, just to ensure they got some training time. This of course was shot down when they saw a sleeping Sakura against a tree and the ever-brooding Sasuke leaning against a large wooden training post. Naruto grumbled as he nodded towards Sasuke. The angsty preteen looked over at him before arching his eyebrow and giving a smirk. Hey moron, what did Kakashi-sensei want to talk to you about? He demanded more than requested. Oh, just that I do my best and take care of Mika ni-chan. Why are you jealous? Naruto retorted. Before long they were at each other's throats, sending insults back and forth. Sakura, being the waking fangirl that she is, stomped right up to Naruto before sending a massive hammer punch into his head, instantly forcing it to become swift friends with the ground. They had been there for a few hours already and still their sensei did not show up. Naruto swiftly got back up only to see Sakura hanging off Sasuke's arm. He went to retort but was stopped as he heard and saw the leaves swirl, revealing a rather late instructor. Yo, I got lost on the road of life, he stated with a wave of his hand. In truth, he just stayed up late drinking with Anko and didn't get up till a few minutes ago. Liar, Naruto and Sakura yelled in unison. They were already in a bad mood. All 3 did as they were told. Didn't eat breakfast, though Sakura was far worse by choosing that night to start her low food intake diet. On top of which they also had not slept well either, due to the fact of how stressful a teenage mind becomes when faced with adversity like thus. The rules were clear last night that if they failed, they were to go back to the academy. Kakashi smiled underneath his mask, but it only became visible to his one eye. He simply held up 2 bells that jingled in his grasp. You 3 are to do your best and take these bells from me. You have until noon, he stated as he set down an alarm clock. Sakura looked at the clock, then at the bells before arching an eyebrow. But sensei, there are only 2 bells and 3 of us. The pink-haired kunoichi in training stated. Yes, that means at most 2 of you will pass. The one that doesn't get a bell will be tied to the training log, and forced to watch me eat their lunch in front of them before going back to the academy. Oh, and a bit of advice, unless you come at me with killing intent you won't succeed. Got that, my little midgets? Kakashi stated, only to watch as Naruto rushed at him, drawing his kunai with the intent to cause bodily harm. Kakashi swiftly snatched Naruto's wrist in his hand before twisting in painfully for the blonde, causing the reaction of anger and embarrassment as Kakashi held the boy's wrist, forcing the point of the arrow-like kunai to be a scant millimeter from the back of Naruto's neck. Well, you got the urge to kill, right, but you jumped the gun, he stated before tossing Naruto back. I didn't say begin. Well, now you can begin. With that, the group dispersed. He smirked, sensing that 2 of them had the right idea to hide and judge what they should do, but Naruto just stood there with his arms crossed. His kunai deposited back into his pouch. Well, you're a bit off, aren't you? Enough with the games, Kakashi-sensei. You and me, here and now. Naruto stated with seriousness. Lesson 1, Taijutsu. Kakashi stated before reaching back into his pouch. This caused Naruto to stop in mid-step, beginning to wonder why his new sensei said that when he was reaching for a weapon. Kakashi smirked before pulling out a little orange book with the title being Icha Icha Paradise. Why are you reading that shit at a time like this? Naruto yelled. He was infuriated, to say the least, that his own sensei was writing him off as someone that was weak. Kakashi didn't look away from the book at all as he stood in a relaxed stance. I want to see what happens next, besides it's not like you can do anything, the teacher stated. He did enjoy causing his opponents to show their emotions, thus making them extremely predictable. However, if he really read the reports, Naruto was perhaps the most unpredictable of all the ninja in Konoha. With that, Naruto rushed using the academy standard taijutsu style. He figured he would test the waters at least at this point, though he wondered why his sensei was treating him like he was worth nothing. He jumped up intending to land a spinning heel kick, only to be blocked by Kakashi's metal-plated hand. Using his leg as an anchor, he flipped backwards before rushing with a straight-armed punch, intending to land the blow in the midsection of his instructor. Kakashi giggled at his book while brushing the offending limb away. Naruto growled but smirked inwardly as his mind began to run through scenarios. He chuckled as he went into a sweeping leg kick, intending to knock the Junin off his feet. However, this was a well-planned feint, as he would make his own sensei underestimate him again. His hands flickering with a subtle speed through 2 seals that were by no means easy to catch. He looked forward for his suspected sensei, knowing the man was behind him. You should never show your back to your opponent, Kakashi stated as he formed a seal while holding his book in one hand. Naruto, run! Sakura yelled from her position. She inwardly was disgusted at Naruto's performance. When she was the seal, she could only have the feeling that Naruto would be done for. However, she was surprised with what happened next. Konoha Ultimate Taijutsu Form, 8,000 Years of Death. Kakashi called out before charging chakra to his fingertips as he thrust upwards, striking Naruto in his posterior, ultimately striking the sensitive nerve, causing the young genin to howl in pain as he flew through the sky and ended up in the river. Naruto held his ass, feeling the sharp pain subside as he pocketed something into his jacket. He smirked warmly before commencing the second plan, forming the appropriate seal. Pop's underwater heralded the form of 3 shadow clones. Each of the shadow clones smirked, unslinging shuriken before tossing them through the water at the perverted ass-poking Junin. Kakashi looked out at the water, sensing a spike in chakra before deflecting the said shuriken. He felt a slight pain in his hand as he noticed the said shuriken had indeed cut through the metal plate on his gloves and ultimately kicking his hand. He couldn't help but smile as he realized Naruto was by no means an idiot, as he had seemingly knew how to apply his chakra manipulation to his weapons. He smiled, knowing that a certain smoking Junin would be surprised, and with that he began to dodge the clones that burst out of the water, preparing to land blows. Within moments he dispatched them while Naruto crawled out of the water sputtering. Kakashi smirked as he leapt back to a tree, laying a trap and a bell on the ground before rushing to a hidden perch. Naruto looked around before seeing a bell. He chuckled before running over to it and grabbing at it, only to be caught by a trap. He grew upset with being caught like a fox in a trap, but smirked as Mika rushed over to snatch the bell. Mika held it in her mouth before she too was caught and yelped in surprise, causing the bell to be dropped. Lesson 2, if it looks obvious, it's an obvious trap. Shut up you ass-poking pervert. Naruto yelled out as he struggled. Kakashi just smirked before dodging kunai and shuriken thrown at him. Sasuke gasped before leaving to find another hiding spot, his position revealed, as he inwardly cursed himself for falling for such a ploy. Kakashi smirked before rushing off to his recent location, however he felt he should deal with that one last. He turned immediately heading for Sakura. Sakura on the other hand chuckled at Naruto and his sister's stupidity before being caught off guard. She turned around to see Kakashi standing behind her before she screamed. Immediately tossing shuriken at her sensei, she ran off only to come forward to see Sasuke, bleeding all over with shuriken, kunai, and needles poking out of his body painfully. When Sasuke collapsed, she let loose an ear-piercing scream of terror at seeing her crushed dead. Kakashi chuckled at the simple genjutsu before dodging to the side as more shuriken came at him. He blinked for a moment as the shuriken struck a few wires, causing more weapons to fly at him. Realizing it was a trap, he swiftly performed a substitution jutsu with a log. He turned only to catch the Uchiha's axe kick with one hand. Swiftly putting his book away, he turned to catch Sasuke's left fist, however it didn't end there as Sasuke swiftly reached for the bells only to barely touch them as Kakashi tossed him away. "I'm not like the other weaklings," Sasuke stated, as he flew through seals. Kakashi's eyes widened, wondering if a genin should be able to do that technique. "Fire style, fireball jutsu," Sasuke stated before taking a deep breath and sent forth a medium-sized stream of flame that turned into a large ball where his sensei was. As the smoke and smoldering flames stayed for a moment, they swiftly dispersed, revealing nothing but burnt grass and charred soil. He looked left then right, behind and above before wondering where his sensei was. "Below you, earth style, inner decapitation," Kakashi stated as he grabbed Sasuke's ankles and pulled him into the ground with only the genin's head above the earth. He smirked before pulling out his book and reading again. "You're right, you're not like the others, but still you're not enough either," Sasuke grumbled as his sensei left him in this predicament only to watch as Sakura walked near him before shrieking again. With that, she once again succumbs to terror and passed out, thinking that all that was left of her precious Sasuke-kun was his head. Meanwhile, Naruto smirked as he got out of his trap, only to let his sister out before walking over towards the strange rock in the training field. Utilizing swift unseen hand seals, he managed to switch the two bells with a shuriken from Sasuke and Sakura. He figured out the exercise being teamwork, but he would figure that he wouldn't tell, especially if the frozen bastard with his head up his ass and his crush couldn't figure it out, then he didn't need to tell them. He saw the bento boxes before cackling with glee. The moment he reached for one, he was once again caught off guard as wires swiftly bound him, his hands, and Mika to that same rock. He looked upwards before nervously laughing. I was just checking on the lunches, Kakashi-sensei. I swear." He lied. "Right, I know they are safe, but I also know you were going to eat them," he stated before dragging off the bewildered genin and pet to a training log before tying them up to it. Sakura and Sasuke came out of the woods as the alarm went off, grumbling. "Since the three of you couldn't get a hold of the bells, and since Naruto tried to eat the food, you all won't be going back to the academy," Kakashi stated with a neutral tone. Naruto grinned widely as Sasuke held a smirk. Sakura was jumping up and down. He wanted for it before his eyes grew cold. "You all should give up being ninja." "Wah!" Naruto yelled out. He struggled against the ropes but could not find a way out of them. "You missed the obvious task of this test," he stated. "Teamwork," Sakura stated. "Yes, teamwork. But how? I mean, there are only two bells, and everyone knows there are always three on genin teams." Sakura whimpered. "The bells themselves would have been taken if you three had worked together. Naruto, you were so willing to do whatever it took to be acknowledged that you rushed first without a plan. Sakura, you were too busy worrying about Sasuke that you neglected Naruto, and Sasuke, you think that everyone is beneath you so you don't need their help. No one ninja can work alone to accomplish missions of high importance. That is why you should just give up. However, I'm going to give you guys another chance. You two are going to eat while Naruto starves. It's his punishment for trying to eat early. Don't feed him or his sister either. You have half an hour," he stated before disappearing only to appear in a tree not far from their location and out of their sensory range. His sweat dropped at Naruto, who was ignoring his stomach, stating that he can handle missing 2 meals. He smiled as he saw Sasuke try to give Naruto his lunch only to have Sakura offer hers. "Eat, moron. If you're too tired from lack of food, we won't succeed." Sasuke chimed in only to have Sakura feed Naruto. He in turn fed the fox only to feel the rumbling of thunder. He looked up to see Kakashi running at them with a look of rage on his face. "You all," Kakashi stated as the genin shuddered. "Pass. Congratulations. What I don't get it, Kakashi-sensei." Sakura whimpered with a look of confusion on her face. "Those who don't follow rules are trash, but those who don't protect their teammates and trust them are even worse than trash." He smiled again as he told them a line that his best friend had told him earlier. "Come on, you guys can have the rest of the day off," he stated as he led Sakura and Sasuke away. Naruto was merely protesting in rage while he still stood tied to a pole with the fox. Naruto calmed down as soon as they all had left beyond his field of vision. With a smirk, he forced his trap to work, causing a loud poof of purple smoke to appear off in the distances. Counting down from 10, the moment he reached 0, Kakashi showed up covered in purple paint. "Alright, what did you do? I read in a textbook to always look underneath the underneath. In any case, your bells are in my pocket. I switched them with simple paintballs after using a substitution and henge on them. That's all. Serves you right for being late, Kakashi-sensei." Naruto chided out as Kakashi cut the rope binding him to the pole. "Ever the prankster, I see. Best type of training in my opinion if you want to learn how to be fast and stealthy. After all, I did manage to outrun 4 Anbu and 8 Chunin when I painted the Hokage monument." Naruto shot his fist up, cheering that fact. "So how much have you held back, I wonder? That is for me to say when I feel like it. After all, a ninja doesn't show every trick he has. Well, see you tomorrow, sensei. Ramen, here I come," Naruto yelled as he took off for his favorite restaurant. Mika looked at the sprinting form of Naruto before shaking her head. "I don't suppose I could get the answer from you, would I, Mika or Kitsu?" Kakashi deadpanned as he wondered. "If I were to say, I would say that he's been holding back a lot of knowledge, although he's still an idiot when it comes to non-combative things and girls. I can't believe he developed a crush on Pinky when Hinata is infatuated with him. How he doesn't notice that is beyond me. As for battle, you witnessed what he could do, and he didn't even use his signature taijutsu style either. Ah well, I better catch up to him, otherwise he will literally empty his wallet and bank account," the fox stated before chasing after her brother, leaving a befuddled Junin instructor. The very next day was rather boring to say the least. Once again the four were waiting upon the bridge. Sakura was just as determined to go on a date with her idol Sasuke, as Naruto was about becoming Hokage. Naruto and Mika the vixen were discussing to themselves pranks and other battle strategies they could apply. Sasuke was in his permanent scowl mood as he tried to wrench his arm free from Sakura. Every once in a while Naruto would turn and scowl at Sasuke for ignoring his love interest, which in turn led Sakura to yell and thwap Naruto's head with her knuckles. And as usual, the blonde idiot would ask Sakura for a date, earning him another rapture of knuckles against his head. This was what Kakashi witnessed from his tree perch while he watched and read another favorite of his aside from Icha Icha Paradise. This was a blue book labeled Adventures of the Ninja Fox. He was rather surprised when the Hokage gave it to him to read as a mission. Kakashi at first tried to put it off, but his curiosity got the better of him. When he asked who the author was, he was even more surprised when he found out that New Kitsuzi was Naruto Uzumaki's pen name. After a few hours he needed an emotional break from the book, and thus he showed up in front of his genin with a scroll dictating their missions. Today was the first one that all genins did. No matter where they were, there was always a lost pet. It just so happens that Fire Country, in which Konoha resides, has a cat. A skittish, afraid of its owner, tabby cat named Tora. Kakashi chuckled, remembering his first experience with catching a cat. It was after all the Fire Daimyo's daughter, who is now the wife of the new one, who had a black tabby cat named Cage. If things were as they were then as they were now, he could almost believe that it would be a good day to annoy his genin. With that he smiled, though it was only visible through his eye. "Yo," he stated, waving his hand. "You're late." Naruto and Sakura screamed. They were furious, having to wait hours on end for their sensei to show up. Sasuke glared to say nothing and the fox just slept lazily upon Naruto's shoulder. Sorry, I had to help an old lady across the street, while defending her honor from rabid rats. He lied, though it was rather smooth for him. Liar! The two hot heads yelled back, their arms crossed. Anyways, I have your first mission for you. Sasuke, I'm letting you lead it. You're also going to need these, he said, handing the mission scroll as well as 3 microphones and earpieces. He slid his own on before sitting down upon a tree stump. Sasuke quickly fit his to his head before opening the scroll up. As he read a little bit, his eye began to twitch. If it makes you feel any better, this was my first mission when I was put on my genin team, and look how I am today, he stated with pride in himself. Sasuke grumbled before testing his radio. Naruto was the next to fit his on before reading the scroll. He was about to retort, but a growl from the fox said it all. A god-damned cat, Mika stated with anger. Naruto ni-chan, let's just get these over with. Kitsu said that genin did a lot of these missions just to earn the right to do higher rank missions. She stated, but she was still angered and annoyed. She unfurled herself from around Naruto's neck and shoulders, stretching much like a cat before looking towards Kakashi. I hope you have something that has its scent on it. It would make it easier to track down, she stated as she thought of a faster way of tracking down the said cat. Kakashi nodded before pulling out a little chew toy. Mika quickly sniffed it before smacking it with her paw towards Naruto. He nodded, catching it before sniffing it as well. Sasuke shook his head as Sakura could only agree with her inner voice that Naruto was in some way a freak. Naruto tossed it back to Kakashi before turning and walking towards the direction that the scent was coming from. After many attempts, they managed to box an area in where the cat had run through. Golden Fox to Cyclops, target is in sight. A voice broke over Kakashi's headset. Cherry Blossom confirms target is in sight. A female voice then stated. Silcops to Raven, does target have a pink ribbon on its ear? The one-eyed pervert asked. Raven confirms. Target has a pink ribbon on its ear. A darker, more annoyed voice retorted. Capture the target, he stated, giving the order while not once taking his one eye off one of his beloved manga. Not long after the order, he wrenched the earpiece away from his head as screams of pain signaled from Golden Fox that the target was indeed clawing or attempting physical and bodily harm towards its captor. God-damned fucking piece of shit cat, Naruto yelled over his microphone as he held the cat out by the scruff of its neck. His face, hands, and arms were marred with dozens if not hundreds of claw slashes, making him appear like he dove head and hand first into a wall full of briars without stopping. The cat looked at him, giving him its own version of its evil eye at being caught. Sasuke on the other hand tucked his hands into his pockets after reporting successful capture of the target, while inwardly he was snickering at Naruto's luck. Sakura looked at the cat while happy at how Naruto was treated. He honestly annoyed her more than her supposed best friend did, and to her that was a lot. Naruto kept the cat at an arm's distance away while looking at the evil feline. Sasuke walked up beside him, giving him a look of condolence. Next time, we feed it to Mika, he stated. Naruto nodded silently, smirking towards the cat with a dangerous glint, causing the said feline to mew and struggled to get away from its executioners by the looks of it. Sakura noticed the cat before taking it from Naruto's grasp, much to the cat's liking as it purred contentedly at its savior. Mika hopped back up onto Naruto's now safe shoulder after having a run-in with the cat earlier. Its nose was still showing sign of injury due to the swipe it had gained when trying to corner the creature, though instead of being bloody as most animals, it was discolored and healing, though still tender to the touch. Naruto nodded before reflexively stroking the top of her head, comforting her. The group remained silent for the most part until they reached the office of the Hokage. Immediately Naruto made sure the whole room was locked down to prevent the said cat from escaping again. After all, it wasn't the first time they managed to bring it back only to have it escape. As the obese lady grabbed and hugged her cat to her bosom, Sasuke smirked, while Naruto and Mika chanted, "Squeeze it harder, suffocate it, and pop its head off." They held no empathy for the cat after the torture it gave them. Satisfied that her cat wouldn't escape the room, Naruto smiled widely before blinking. Reflexively he made a shadow clone before causing it to hinge into a leash before handing it to the lady. "Just in case Tora decides to run off while you're taking her home. Wouldn't want you to lose her again, right?" he stated. though in truth he knew from most animals that cats hated leashes. It was undignified for them, however to humans animals on a leash looked so cute. The lady accepted the leash gratefully and attached it much to the chagrin of the cat. "Now be a good kitty cat and don't run away again," he stated clearly. With that being said and done, Sasuke nodded towards Naruto, glad that his idiot team member did something right for a change, even more so the fact that it involved humiliating the cat. Each receiving their expected pay, Naruto merely filled his wallet up, something that resembled a bloated frog with a slug on top of its head. "Oi Sakura-chan, would you like to get some ramen with me?" Naruto asked, hoping that she would say yes. "No Naruto. God you're annoying," she yelled while bringing her fist crashing down upon his head. Sasuke-kun. Would you?" Her voice and personality swiftly receded, doing a 180. "No," he stated clearly before leaving. Kakashi just chuckled at his genin team, knowing that each had their own strong points and weaknesses, though their teamwork left something to be desired, but that was the point of these D-grade missions, to work on their teamwork. He watched Naruto carefully. After the incident with the bells he tried to figure the kid out entirely. However, this was often cut short when he decided to see what the Avenger was up to. He knew exactly why he was chosen to lead this team especially. One of course was that he had the Sharingan eye and was to assist Sasuke in using his. The other was that he was to watch Naruto and be there in case the seal slipped. He didn't quite trust the fox, but that was given since the only fatherly figure he had in his young life was his teacher, who had sealed the fox into Naruto. Sakura on the other hand was the genin assigned to the team because her genjutsu skills and chakra control offset the Uchiha and Uzumaki, who were lacking in both departments. He knew Naruto knew the basic genjutsu, such as hiding things. It was common especially for his prankster side. Sasuke on the other hand wanted nothing to do with genjutsu since his main goal in life was to kill his elder brother, whom can see through all genjutsu, so why learn something that is pointless? Or so Sasuke stated on his report to the Hokage about his skills. Picking up his book he silently followed the Uchiha back to his mansion, which 5 years ago was the site of a slaughter. At another training field 3 wary genin sat down comfortably upon 3 tree stumps, their lunches spread out before them thankfully from one of their teammates. Team 8, as they were recently dubbed, the Information Gathering and Recon Science Team. Upon it was the male heir to the Inuzuka tribe, one loud-mouthed, brash, unkempt Kiba and his companion Akamaru. Sitting silently beside him was another heir, though to the most powerful and secretive clan, Hinata Hyuga, who was timidly enjoying her lunch with her new friends. Though she was happy, she couldn't pull her mind away from her secret love interest. The more she watched him, the more she became infatuated with him, almost bordering on stalking, one would say. Inside her mind was a torrent of questions, regarding how everyone else seems to speak ill of the boy when all he does is try to help people feel better and be happy. If he were a cloud, there would be no silver lining, because the cloud would be pure silver, or in her imagination gold with blue hues. She blushed secretly to herself as she nibbled on her rice balls. The last genin member of their team was also an heir, but to the most secretive clan, though not by choice. They were often viewed as dark, disgusting, and filthy because of the insects they allowed within their bodies. This of course led the clan to be shied away from but often called upon when in need of loyal and true assistance to Konoha. Shino Aburame was the name of the stoic and gloomy boy. It was true that he never had many friends, if any at all, but then again he was always quiet, more so than Hinata, which in turn irritated Kiba more than anything since their personalities were exact opposites. Whereas Kiba was short-sighted, brash, impulsive and loud, Shino was quiet, reserved, constantly thinking far ahead, and patient. Hinata was just the shy medium between the two. Their Junin instructor on the other hand was none other than the Ice Queen herself. The untouchable, unobtainable woman Kurane Yuhi, mistress of Genjutsu. Her skills and creativity with mind-altering attacks and defenses were in themselves legendary. She smiled down at her genin, happy at how well they worked together. Their skills complementing each other perfectly. The Inuzuka tribe had the best sense of smell, the Hyuga the best sense of sight, and the Aburame clan, a mixture between scent, hearing, and sight. Their bugs were perfectly suited to any environment that was either forest, water, plains, swamps, deserts, and mountains. The only place that they were not as useful in were snowy areas, but then again that was natural since no insect or aburame would be caught dead near frozen areas. Kurane also was glad to have Hinata upon her team. She hoped that despite what her father had stated verbally, though differently through written, that she could assist in bringing Hinata back her confidence. Kurane-sensei. Hinata stuttered out while still in deep thought. Yes, Hinata? What can I help you with? She asked. I was wondering why people hate certain people of the village when those are nice. She absent-mindedly asked before clasping her hand over her mouth. Kurane arched an eyebrow for a moment before her lips turned into a Cheshire cat-like grin. Haha. Hinata, why do you worry about that idiot? I mean, it's obvious that he's weak, talentless, well except in taijutsu apparently, and totally not worth your time unlike me. Kiba stated. Hinata glanced over at him for a moment before sighing. Kiba-kun, why? You shouldn't say such things about people. Hinata stated out. I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess this has something to do with a certain blonde-haired prankster. While I personally don't dislike him, and I do enjoy some of his more colorful pranks including the one he did on me a while back. She mused, remembering being dressed up looking like a rose. He has a past that, well, I cannot tell because it's his secret. I know people hate him because of his pranks. But this has gone on before his pranks. She stammered out with a mild blush. Hinata, it would be wise to not delve too deep into his secrets without his permission. He carries a rather encumbersome burden that earns my clan's respect. Shino stated. His teammates gasped before looking over at Shino. They knew that he was a person of few words, but for him to state 2 sentences and it not be a life or death situation was rather astonishing. Kurane took a moment to word without a voice a single question, in which Shino adjusted his sunglasses in response. I know of his secret, and no, I will not tell you since it is his. He is a comrade, and what he wishes to be kept secret is his right as a comrade and a shinobi. If you wish to know, simply ask him. He stated, much to Kiba's annoyance and Hinata's sigh of defeat. Hinata, I agree wholeheartedly with Shino. Besides, it would mean more to him if you asked him. Beside, you two might become a couple if you do. She stated with a cheery look on her face. She knew all too well from escorting the young heir that she had a crush on Naruto. One would have to be naive, dumb, blind, and oblivious to their surroundings to not notice. Anyways, Kiba, would you do me a favor of escorting Hinata home? I have decided that in my absence that Shino will be the squad leader given his foresight and tactical analysis. I must take him to the Hokage to show him where to pick up mission scrolls and such. She stated, though it was a half-truth. Hinata and Kiba nodded while packing up their equipment. Oh, and Hinata, if I were you, I would venture to get your crush's attention before he completely falls for a pink-haired idiot. Kurane stated clearly before nodding, signaling the end of their day. Hinata nodded but kept a glowing blush while Kiba smiled, glad to have alone time with his own crush. The moment they were far enough away, she put on a very serious face before looking over at Shino. Who told you? She demanded. With all due respect, Kurane-sensei, we should discuss this with the Hokage in his chambers, considering that even out here people will hear things. He stated before walking towards the administration tower that the Hokage was often in. She nodded but scowled at the situation. She only prayed that things were not as bad as they had seemed. After a few minutes they swiftly were led into the Hokage's office with only the statement of an S-class law. The Anbu nodded, knowing all too well the law, as it had earlier cost them a few of their own. Well, this is surprising to say the least. What do I owe the pleasure? Sarutobi asked. This is in regards to Shino Aburame, Uzumaki Naruto, and the law. Kurane stated. The Hokage's face, though smiling, was swiftly turning into a very serious scowl. Aburame Shino, I must know exactly what you know, how you came to this knowledge, and what you intend to do with this knowledge. He stated, his voice becoming extremely authoritative. Yes, Hokage-sama, I know exactly the burden of my comrade Uzumaki Naruto, and his situation regarding it. As you well know, my clan thinks logically, and often hides our potential, often to blend in like the insects we use. Secondly, we are ever observant. Speaking for my clan, we find the majority of the villagers' opinion of Uzumaki-san disgusting. He is in essence very similar to us, being a container. His, however, is unwillingly to himself. As to how I gained this knowledge, I knew of the gap before the academy acceptance of him, and when he and I both were 3 years of age. I also have witnessed many horrible things done to him earlier in my years. Then there is also the fact that both my personal hive, and the enclave at my clan's residence that proves my theory. To simply state it, Uzumaki-san is the sacrificial container for Kyuubi, the nine-tailed demon fox. My clan suffered many losses not only in personal but in the enclave during the attack. He has a subtle exhume of the beast's chakra all the time. He paused for a breath, finding talking this often to be tiring. On top of which, it is easily proven that he is not the demon, since if he were, there would be no pure chakra which alters the chakra of the Kyuubi into normal chakra. This is simple logical fact. Then there is the personality of Naruto, which is taken into consideration. A person that annoyingly positive would not be a merciless slaughtered bent on rage and destruction. If one were to simply put aside their emotions and look at the picture as a whole, they would find Naruto to be a hero as Yondaime wished him to be. He stated. Sarutobi blinked for a moment before shaking his head. Kurenai twitched for a moment before sighing. As for what I will do with the information, I have no intention of betraying a comrade with his secrets. I have stated such to Hinata-san and Kiba-san earlier. It is not merely because of the law, but out of respect. Very well, but you should speak with Naruto about this. It is his secret, and to be found out by you, that will hold strength against him, which would not bode well. Also that if you do speak of it to any of your generation or others, that it is a criminal offense. Sarutobi stated, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Shino, as you know, Naruto doesn't have many friends his own age. I think the only one he has is Hinata, though the boy is blind to her affections. Secondly, if you witness anyone speaking of it openly, you are to inform us, or deal with the perpetrator themselves. Kurenai emphasized. Shino, if I may ask, given your analysis of your fellow genin, who else do you think would figure this information out? Sarutobi asked. He couldn't help but wonder who he would have to speak to next in regards to the information given. Haruno Sakura, if she were ever to mature and realize that Uchiha-san will never return her feelings. She is the smartest of the whole class, including the genius Shikamaru Nara. I should have expected this. Indeed, Hokage-sama, if I may say so. Naruto is someone that I and my clan respect, not only because of his position, but because how he handles it. I know very well what happened with a Chunin who broke the rules, assaulted him, and injured a fellow Konoha ninja. I sense that his abilities in themselves are near Junin, if not already there, and that I know that he would be on par with you, Kurenai-sensei, that's with his pure chakra alone. Excuse me, Aburame, are you inferring that I am weak? By no means, Kurenai-sensei. I am merely stating that Naruto is perhaps the strongest of this year's class. He hides his true strength well, and I have figured it out during the genin exams. It would be rational to state that he is holding back, and that I would not wish to anger him nor make an enemy from him. He stated, I also know that I could not defeat you, Kurenai-sensei. At most I would stay on par with most Chunin and special Junin, should I acquire another hive. He stated clearly. Kurenai visibly relaxed at the boy's rather strange compliment, though she was slightly unnerved at how much the boy spoke. Shino simply readjusted his sunglasses before turning his head in the direction of the Hokage. If that is all, may I return to my home? He asked decidedly. Very well. The secret you have undoubtedly figured out is an S-rank secret, and as such, if you are to speak of it, it will lead to your execution. The Hokage reiterated, ensuring that he was extremely serious. Shino nodded respectfully before exiting the room, his hands being settled into his pockets as he made his way towards his clan's home. Kurenai looked over at the village's strongest and wisest living leader. Is everything okay, Hokage-sama? She asked as the old man simply sighed before relighting his pipe. I wonder how Naruto will react, and that if the law I implemented during the first few days of his life will allow him to have a normal life. He simply muttered. You and I both know that's all that we could expect. After all, his life has been anything but normal, considering how the civilians and a majority of the adult shinobi treat him. I would request though that he should be allowed to make his own decisions about his secrets. After all, if people truly are to respect him, he would have to eventually reveal that secret. If anything, his true friends would respect him even more for confiding to them. She stated, I too shall return home. And with that she bowed before exiting. The Hokage sighed before rolling up his sleeves and looking over at the paperwork, wondering how his successor was ever able to get the mountains of paperwork done within an hour. Naruto sighed as he drug himself home. He was truly exhausted, A day full of missions, though he considered them to be detrimental to his sanity, on top of which the sparring matches he had with both Sakura and Sasuke were unnerving and painful. If that was all, he could see that he would still have energy, but then Kakashi-sensei just had to go and drill them in teamwork exercises which involved himself being a target while Sasuke and Sakura were the ones to defeat him. Even the use of his intelligent strategies and a bit more show of his personal taijutsu style ended up with him being beaten, burnt, and dragged through the ground in a proverbial hell. His sister was also in the same state of mind as she limped up beside him. Twice Sasuke had kicked her away, dislocating her left legs during the exercise, and looked pleased afterwards. Even then Kakashi didn't say a thing, though it irritated Naruto to no end, though the highest point of his day was when he got to talk with Hinata on his way home. He couldn't quite figure out how she kept blushing and twiddling her fingers nervously, but he didn't mind. He was just glad she was there on his usual abysmal walk through the prejudiced village. Sighing, he opened up his cabinet and swiftly pulled out a few ramen cups before boiling some water on his stove. He prayed to whatever god was out there that tomorrow would be better, however unknown to most genin his age as well as others that all these missions were designed with the aspect of building a solid base of teamwork and trust, before going on to bigger things outside the village. After 3 minutes he scarfed down his precious ramen before disappearing into his bedroom. Not too long after Team 7 found themselves once again chasing the dread cat from hell. If that weren't enough, they had managed to obtain several missions, though they themselves would call it degrading, hellish, boring tasks, which usually involved rescuing pets, walking the said pets, cleaning up the village, babysitting the Lord's children, a case in which they had the unfortunate luck of drawing lots for that one, amongst other degrading and debasing missions. To say they were angry would be stating that Sasuke mildly disliked his brother. That was exactly how they felt as they walked back to town holding a bedraggled, enraged, and nearly dead cat. Sasuke and Naruto looked each other in the eyes, silently agreeing to ensure Sakura would be tied, gagged, and knocked unconscious should they get the mission again. It would be worth a failure just to be sure the said cat was not only dead, but unable to be found. On top of that, the reward of never again have to chase down the demonic cat from hell would be more than enough in itself. Even Kakashi noticed the somber looks upon their face as they made their way back to the Hokage's office expecting another degrading mission.
That's all for now. If you enjoyed this video, then please like, share and do comments.